Chapter 1813. Events of all sizes in the void could basically be categorized into two major categories: order and chaos. Now, if one were to raise the level of events to a level similar to their own, it would still be order and chaos, although it could also be described as origins and chaos. After dozens of eras of development, the world of order was no longer a barren wasteland, and there were billions of events and even more situations. Even if order was so complex, chaos was still chaos. It was more or less the same regardless of time and place, holed up in a place where it could not see the light, sighing at the void of order. Ah, that's the land we once lost. We have to find the time to take it back. When the level of events was forcibly raised to the level of origins and chaos, the current situation could be described simply: one was fatal, and the other was fatal. It was no wonder that Maple's face turned so green when he identified it. When he first came to this void, he had thought that it would definitely involve the chaos concept body. He was mentally prepared, so it was not a problem. However, he was clearly not prepared to encounter something related to the origin. The two added together were simply adding fuel to the fire and adding to the snow. As for why I'm talking about the origin of gods, a statue with no facial features, an ordinary building that looks like a divine temple, a throne that looks like a throne, and the very first divine language. With all these factors combined together, I should be able to understand what I'm talking about. The only thing missing was the energy of origins being pressed into the statue. That's right, there was a 70 to 80% chance that it was a statue of the heavenly god of origins. However, unlike the spiritual world of Sui Feng and the others, their statues could be used to connect with the heavenly god of origins. It was a vague connection, whereas the statue before Maple's eyes was probably for personal viewing. Come to think of it, this place should not have anything to do with faith, since everything related to the heavenly god of origins was more or less ambiguous. So, everything that had happened so far could be summed up quickly. There was another world of light hidden inside the world of light, and there were two shrines and a statue of the heavenly god of origin. The place where the statue of the heavenly god of origin was hidden was an abandoned forest, and the sentry towers that surrounded it should be the place where the guards of the shrines lived. There shouldn't be anything else worth paying attention to here. The entire temple seems to be used to place this statue, and the other places are empty. I've just taken a look. The energy on top of these buildings, if I'm not mistaken, should be used to power an energy barrier. But it has been abandoned for too long, and most of the energy has dissipated, so the barrier to keep outsiders out is naturally ineffective. We looked around and walked back to the statue. He saw that Feng was still staring at the statue with a green face and didn't say anything. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Feng, are you going to fight with this statue? Even if you stare until your eyes burst, it won't affect it." Yin Nuoxing turned and rolled her eyes at him. "I'm looking for traces related to the heavenly god of origin." "All right, then did you see anything? Did you recognize which heavenly god of origin it is? Or did you feel a little reaction from some origin energy?" Yin Nuoxing blinked twice and shook her head. "No reaction. The statue itself is a dead object, and there is no origin energy or origin law. Under such circumstances, my origin energy did not have any reaction to it, and I can't tell whether it is the statue of the heavenly god of origin or not." He let out a muffled sound, crossed his arms, and suddenly said, "Then let's not talk about this. Answer with your intuition. What do you feel?" "I feel that at least it is related." Yin Nuoxing sighed. There were too many details that pointed to the statue, but the most important part was missing. However, at the very least, they could only assume that it was a statue left behind by the heavenly god of origin in the past. The heavenly god of origin might not even know about it. After all, there were too many people in the world of order who knew about them, and too many people regarded them as spiritual pillars. Erecting a statue was probably a very common thing, so there was no way to immediately deny that it was related to the heavenly god of origin. He scratched his head and walked around the statue twice. When he was about to walk around the statue for the third time, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and his whole body bounced up. His movement was so loud that Yin Nuoxing and the others were stunned. Just as they were about to speak, he shouted, "Phone! I have a way to verify it." Before Yin Nuashing could say anything, we walked to a place about 5 or 6 meters in front of the statue in the hall. He suddenly knelt down, straightened his back, and put his palms together. "Supreme Heavenly God of Origin, please listen to my prayers. Let those bastards of the underworld die. Yin Nuashing, see you, and Feng Qing Wang." What a guy. He was praying to the statue of the Heavenly God of Origin. He was using his actions to verify reality. We quickly got up and looked at Feng. "How is it?" "How would I know?" "I don't know." We scratched his head as he shook his head and frowned. "Didn't you have a reaction when I talked about it in Sui Feng's house last time?" "That's because their statues are real. They have the power of origin and the laws of origin. With tens of thousands of people chanting at the same time, it would be strange if I didn't have a reaction. But this thing in front of you is obviously just a decoration. It's just a big rock." Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and sighed. He was wondering why Hui had knelt down and prayed without saying anything. It turned out that he had recalled the scene that day. Although he seemed to have usurped something from the Heavenly God of Origin, that was only because he had too much origin energy in the world core of the origin world. In short, he had too much origin energy, so he was misjudged. It didn't really have anything to do with him. Yin Nuashing heaved a sigh of relief. He waved his hand and turned to the door. Let's go, let's go. Isn't there another temple?" "There's nothing here." Crack. The sound of the stone breaking suddenly reverberated in the empty hall, causing the four of them to suddenly stiffen. They turned their heads and looked at each other. Yin Nuashing's face was half green and half black. He turned his head and looked at the statue. There was only one thing here that could make such a sound. After they turned their heads, they could see at a glance that in the center of the statue, a black crack had appeared on the human body part. Under their gaze, the crack suddenly burst out in all directions, covering the entire surface of the statue in a few seconds. From its fragmented appearance, it looked like it could be blown to pieces with a single breath. Hui was so scared that his face turned ugly. "Isn't it just asking you to attack the underworld? Is it necessary? Is it necessary to crack it? Why don't we discuss changing the petition? Let's discuss it and you can glue it back yourself." Yin Nuashing slapped the back of Huey's head. "This statue has been here for God knows how many years, but it cracked because of you. I don't know if it's because your belief is too strong or because your wish is too difficult to realize. It seems to have stopped." Siyu whispered to remind the two people who had interrupted them. They looked at the statue again. At this moment, the cracks that had spread like a spider web had stopped spreading. The statue that was full of cracks looked as if it had been split open by a punch right in the middle. It was on the verge of shattering, but it had stopped at this moment. We walked forward to take a look. He turned his head and said to Feng, "It stopped. Should I break it? It looks a little uncomfortable." Yin Nuashing became excited on the spot. "Break, bang. Break your hammer." The statue exploded and turned into stone powder that scattered throughout the hall. Yin Nuashing stiffly maintained her outstretched hand. Her cheeks twitched a few times. It turned out that the next time he wanted to hold Hui, who was more mobile down, he should have slapped him to the ground without saying a word. What did he say? A second ago, the two girls were still studying the statue that was on the verge of breaking. At this moment, they were shocked by the smoke and dust that suddenly rose. When they saw Yin Nuashing's stunned expression, they thought for a moment and hurriedly went to her side. They stood on her left and right, vigilant of their surroundings. As for the statue, well, it was now very uneven throughout the entire hall. At the same time, a slightly strange aura also filled the entire hall with the smoke and dust. The moment this aura came out, Yin Nuashing's body weathered into a statue on the spot, the origin energy. There was no doubt that it was real. The strange energy was released from where the statue originally was in an instant and enveloped the entire hall at a speed that was not particularly fast. In an instant, the bodies of the four people stiffened together. In the place where the dust spread, a ball of purple and white light intertwined little by little appeared and floated up and down in the dust. About half a minute later, a wind pressure released by the origin energy blew away the smoke and dust in front of them. The energy that just woke up seemed to be stretching, and the energy reaction gradually increased. Yin Noashing pulled out the nether void sword with a whoosh, grabbed Hui across the air, and threw him behind her. She took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the 3 people. Like the moment when a galaxy was formed, the smoke and dust dissipated, and the light in the center gradually appeared before their eyes. It was a crystal that looked like a water droplet about 10 feet in size. It contained an unusually rich origin energy and origin rules. It was grayish-white in color, and the center shone with a purple light. There was no sign of the energy eruption for the time being. Anyway, it was not a bad idea to stand in front of the 4 people. If this energy were to explode, he was probably the only one who could barely withstand it. "Hey, when did you learn to be a shield?" We walked up to him and patted him on the shoulder. He smiled and said, "I'm the shield, okay? You better watch out. This is origin energy. I'm not joking with you. This thing is going to cause a ruckus when it's full of energy. I know. We've seen it so many times." We shrugged and walked forward without much concern. Yin Nuashing saw it, gritted her teeth, and followed him. She listened as he walked and muttered, "I think it's just a normal situation. There's no sense of danger. A normal origin energy would not cause trouble for order for no reason. You don't have to be so nervous." Yin Nuashing was speechless. This guy had suddenly become bold after seeing it so many times. Damn it, every time a disaster happened, it was not him. He must be fine, but if you think about it carefully, an incident where the origin energy suddenly went berserk and punched a hole in the void, well, they did not seem to have encountered such an incident. At most, they had encountered a clone of the heavenly god of origin who was covered in chaos and had a big fight. He was the one who fought. The incident on the Cloud Continent and the origin relic incident was also caused by him. In the end, he was the one who was persecuted. It was only the world where he was injured. Damn it, the origin relic incident was indeed the origin relic incident. The 2 of them approached the droplet-shaped origin energy crystal and walked around in circles. One of them was tense and vigilant and could not wait to retreat. The other looked relaxed and eager, as if he was ready to touch it. Then Hui really went up to touch it at lightning speed and exclaimed, "Phone, this thing is hot." A million thoughts flashed through Yun Nuashing's mind in an instant, and the result of each thought directly pointed to the collapse of the current void region. He almost rushed up and smashed the creation of origin into nothingness, but the latter moved 1 step ahead of him, and he did not have time to react. Asterisk ding. Asterisk, a crisp sound of energy vibrating suddenly sounded, and the sound waves of energy vibrating could be seen, making the surrounding space ripple, spreading throughout the hall. We saw that it had a little reaction and quickly jumped off the stage. He was just bold, but it was not to the extent that he had the guts to do anything. When he saw that the thing related to the origin energy had a little movement, he would still be a coward. At this moment, he jumped down and immediately set up his shield. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing wanted to kick him. The sound of energy vibrating was heard 5 times in total. Then, the origin droplet, the name that they had just given it, suddenly shook left and right. It trembled slightly, and the purple light inside it receded. Suddenly, it flew up and crashed through the roof of the temple. It turned into a ray of light and disappeared in midair. It flew away. Siyu pulled Feng Qing Wang and quickly ran to the bottom of the big hole. It even drilled a hole in the sea of trees, and they could see the orange sky. It just left like that. We looked up at the sky, but he could not see the trace of the origin droplet. It trembled slightly when it flew in midair. It must have disappeared through teleportation. We looked at Feng Qing Wang, whose face was dark, and laughed. "See, it's fine now." Yin Nuashing stared at him with a fake smile and said, "That's right. If anything happens, it will cause quite a stir. This place is not our territory, and it's not the upper plane. It's just a weak lower plane. We can easily destroy the void with just a few moves. Even I don't dare to go up there directly. You, on the other hand, went up there directly. Do you have a grudge against this world? You didn't prepare anything and just went up there rashly. Or do you think that nothing will happen, so you're just going to do it without thinking?" Hui smiled and scratched his head. He was indeed a little arrogant. He was already a mid-level premier. He wanted to try the power of the origin droplet more or less. It was a little suicidal. No, it was actually to test his strength. That's right. Yin Nuashing saw through Huey's thoughts, and his face twitched a few times. There was once a person who encountered something related to the origin heavenly god. Although he didn't run away faster than anyone else, he wasn't as resistant as Yin Nuashing, but he was definitely very careful. So careful that he looked a little sneaky and funny. But when did he start to go further and further down the road of death? He didn't intend to turn back. Let's go to the temple next door. Hui had already slipped out of the temple when he was thinking about whether he should throw this guy, who was getting further and further away, into the energy of the origin droplet to torture him when he returned to the front line of the void. There was no statue in the other temple, but there was a passage leading to the underground. The entrance was blocked by a huge stone. There was no place for such a big stone to be dug out in the surrounding area. It could be inferred that the big stone was left here by someone and did not roll in naturally. There were no other traces in this place. Perhaps the people who used to live here had blocked the entrance of the underground passage and did not have much time to deal with it. After the big stone was removed, the whole picture of the underground passage was exposed. The frame had been covered by green moss. Below was a staircase leading to the dark underground. Due to the good seal, there were no dead branches and leaves. Instead, there was a rotten smell that was not particularly pleasant. The deeper parts of the underground were not as clean as the stairs at the beginning. There were obvious signs of damage, which should be natural damage. For example, the walls cracked due to earthquakes, and there was a huge forest above. These signs of erosion caused by the forest caused the underground part to be even more dilapidated than the surface, which had been abandoned for a long time. It did not seem to be protected by energy. So you poked at the tree root that was clinging to the wall a few times. She reached out and broke off the tree root. She yelped softly and put it back. After a while, she picked up the stone that fell from the broken wall and threw it forward. When it came into contact with the deep darkness, it produced a rolling echo. The surging energy light illuminated the underground passage, revealing a wide but severely deformed passage. The ceiling, walls, and ground all had different degrees of cracks. It was just that the passage made of unusual stone bricks was obviously not sturdy enough to withstand the test of time. Apart from the tree root that Siyu had just broken off the wall, there were even bigger roots hanging down from the ceiling on the ground in front of her, penetrating it and taking root further down. If there was a bird's eye view of the entire underground passage, it must have been tied up by tree roots and pierced back and forth hundreds of times. Although he didn't know how long it had existed for, it could be counted from the time this place was abandoned. For it to have persisted until today without collapsing and being buried by the soil and roots was already very impressive. The four of them walked along the only passage, occasionally looking around. The crack in the wall was about 3 to 4 inches wide, and a tree root had squeezed in. Occasionally, they would look at the ceiling. The huge tree root was hanging on the ceiling in the shape of a flower. It looked a little disgusting. After walking for about half an hour, they did not see any forks in the road, nor did they see anything else. From the perspective of space and law, they were indeed walking forward and were not trapped in some strange place. This used to be an underground maze, Yin Noashing said as her cheeks twitched. She muttered in her heart, "Another maze. Huh." Siyu quickly looked around and tilted her head. "I don't see any other intersection. It's blocked." Yin Nuashing stopped and patted the wall beside her a few times. Energy surged and removed the entire wall, revealing the deep and dark passage behind it. She then used energy to light up the interior. "Look, this is a fork in the road. When it was built, there were many forks in the road. I'm almost done exploring. It shouldn't be a maze. Not every road is connected. If I have to say, it should be in." Yin Nuashing lowered her head and pulled her long hair. "An underground multi-purpose facility. We can see many empty halls. There should be something inside, but it's already empty. There's nothing worth exploring." As he spoke, he blocked the wall again. Since it's blocked, it should be used up and should be abandoned. There's no need to go to other places. There's only one way for us. Hui asked, "Where does this place lead to?" Inside the mountain. It's still inside the mountain, but it's from the center of the primitive jungle to the edge. The light in Yin Nuoxing's eyes faded. She had more or less figured out the situation. You can think of it as a quick way to get here. After all, you have to walk in the primitive jungle. Even if there are signs, you may get lost. It's better to leave a path that leads to the temple. But this path has been blocked, and it's very blocked. There's 7 or 8 layers of energy seals on it. When it's opened, there may be some movement. Hui crossed his arms and thought as he muttered, an abandoned temple, a statue suspected to be the god of origin, an origin creation in the statue, an abandoned underground building, and a completely blocked passage. Why didn't they just destroy it directly, but just block it up? You're asking me. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and shrugged. Who should I ask? How would I know why they just closed the door instead of smashing the whole house? Hui rolled his eyes a few times and continued to mumble. Perhaps they plan to come back here one day and open up everything that should be there so that they could see the light of day again. That's why they didn't completely destroy everything, be it the buildings in the forest or this underground building. However, time has passed so many years that those who left have probably already disappeared with the wind of time, and no one has ever come back. He suddenly straightened up and looked at Maple in a daze. Just like the god of origin in the previous era who had disappeared, looking forward to their return, but can't stop the fact that they have passed away. We snapped his fingers and laughed. What do you think of this script? I think it should make sense. Yin Nuoxing. He had thought that Hui was really thinking about something and had even touched something. Chapter 1814. The Shadows of the Past. The Shadows of the Past. Huey's script might have hit the nail on the head. Even if it was just his conjecture, it also happened to be what was happening in the background of the void. The heavenly gods of order and origins had passed away. Their names and existences were slowly becoming thinner as the torrent of time continued to scour and crush them. Their remaining traces were covered by the void and could not see the light again. Just as we had guessed, there were people in the void of order who were looking forward to their return, but it was ultimately just a beautiful thought. From what he knew, those undead, few, the heavenly gods of origin might have. Not to say that they had retreated from the void of order forever, but at the very least, they would not appear again for the next few dozen eras. Oh, except for her. She had returned once in the 60th era, but had completely disappeared after that. At that point, the heavenly gods of origin had completely retired from the void of order, and the indestructible traces they left behind were forever hidden in the void along with them and those related to them. There were no accidents that were accidentally exposed, and all were buried in the void, waiting for someone to come in the distant future and let them see the light of day again. But basically only those related to origins would come into contact with them, such as him, while the most unlucky person in the void. From a certain point of view, his passive skill was to attract things related to the heavenly gods of origin and things related to the void of chaos. When faced with both at the same time, he even wanted to wipe out the void region and pretend that he saw nothing. Oh, that's not right. He could not defeat the chaos concept body that was probably slumbering here. So, well, just treat it as if he farted. Why do you have to run into all kinds of crap? The collapsed underground ruins had obvious signs of man-made destruction, as well as scars left behind by natural activities, leaving the unlucky building that was originally used for an unknown purpose in tatters. On the other hand, it was not that dilapidated near the heart of the primeval forest. The further they went to the edge of the forest, the more severe the collapse of the underground ruins became. Along the way, they had already encountered entangled roots blocking their way 5 times, and rubble from collapsed walls 10 times. It was not that difficult to deal with them. However, starting from this part of the road, there are many signs of vandalism. We pointed at the collapsed wall in front of them. The mud mixed with the roots had all poured into the tunnel. This was the 3rd time they had seen this kind of deliberate destruction. It looked like it had been directly penetrated by something. Where is it now? Yin Nuoxing released her soul and looked around. A moment later, she said, there's still a short distance to the exit of the tunnel. The structure of the ceiling ahead is already very loose. It's very likely that it will collapse. Let's not make any noise here. Although we're buried here, we won't. Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, Hui kicked away the sand and stones in front of him. The whole ground trembled violently. Then, there was a muffled sound in front of him. The trembling of the ground also became more intense in just a few seconds. A multicolored energy was released from Yun Nuoxing's body, and in an instant, it spread throughout the entire underground ruins. An invisible force held up the underground ruins that were about to collapse. He let out a long sigh. Don't cause trouble. Although he had quickly suppressed the collapse of the ground, the trembling still did not stop. The already loose structure was triggering a series of collapses. No one knew what kind of heroic scene was happening on the ground. Anyway, the next half of the road was covered in rumbling and trembling. Sia looked up from time to time. She felt that the rock wall would collapse at any time. There's someone outside? Yin Nuoxing's gaze drifted. He looked not far ahead, past the several seals at the entrance of the ruins, and saw the outside. It seems that they were attracted by the trembling. It's just a kick. Is it necessary? Hui scratched his head and muttered. Feng rolled his eyes and could not help but laugh. Are they waiting for us at the entrance? No, they did not find this entrance. They are watching from the upper position. They are getting ready to leave. They saw the scene of the collapse and are leaving. Let's hurry up and follow them. Yin Nuoxing said and walked a few steps faster. The group of people trotted in the tunnel that continued to tremble. Hui was still leading the way. He kicked all the things that blocked the way. If he had not used the origin energy to support this place, it would not have been as simple as a landslide. Half of this primitive forest might have collapsed. Seal. Hui saw a light coming from the front of the ruins and rushed over first. It was an energy light wall erected in front of them. The whole thing had a grayish-white luster. In the center, there was a purple pattern that looked like an energy rune. There were as many as 7 layers erected in a row. After a long time, it had not been naturally unsealed. Until now, it was still firmly guarding the entrance of the passage. Yun Nuoxing quickly stepped forward and put her hand on the energy light wall. Her face changed slightly. She looked puzzled, but also a little matter-of-fact. The origin energy, although I had expected it when I saw the statue. There is even the origin energy. Is it not just a statue left behind by personal significance? We stepped forward and knocked on the light wall. Whose energy is it? I don't know. So far, I have not encountered anything related to it. It is new. The energy level is not particularly high. It should not be something left behind by the origin god himself. It should be handed over to someone. Could it be an inheritor? Yin Nuoxing heard and squinted. She shook her head and said, I don't know. It was hard to say how many inheritors there were. There were 2 reasons for this. First, the number of inheritors left behind by the heavenly origin god was not very clear. According to Sui Feng and the others, as long as the origin energy was passed down by the heavenly origin god or someone close to the heavenly origin god, they could be considered as an inheritor. The only difference between them was their level of mastery of the origin energy. The second reason was the recognition of the inheritors. Those who were officially declared as inheritors were people of the same level as them, or people of a higher level. However, there was another group of people besides the 131 inheritors. As for why they were not sealed together with them, they did not know. There was another group, which they had seen before and were above them. It was what Sui Feng and the others called those who were recognized by the gods. It could be said that they were the core of the inheritors. They had seen a few of them, and a few of them had never seen them before. Therefore, after careful division, there were 3 levels. There were definitely more than 131, and there were definitely more than 149. However, everyone's identity was that of an inheritor. Forget it. Let's not care about whether they are inheritors or not. Anyway, they're definitely related to the origin energy. Yin Nuoxing sighed. The colorful colors on her body faded and was replaced by a grayish-white origin energy. When the energy of the same origin touched the barrier, it quickly melted and disintegrated. However, only the grayish-white barrier disappeared. A purple energy rune hung in the air like a spiderweb, firmly blocking the way. This is another type of origin energy. After a brief inspection, Yun Nuoxing's face twitched a few times. The purple energy rune was also cast with origin energy. Two types of origin energy were used to seal the barrier. The standards of this underground ruin were really high. Therefore, Hui and Siyu watched as Yun Nuoxing turned grayish-white for a while, then purple for a while. He kept going back and forth, as if he was continuously dying himself. After repeating this process 7 times, the seal and barrier in front of them were finally broken. The 4 of them walked out of the underground ruin with the help of the outside light. The exit was a vertical shaft that was laid on the ground. That's right, but they walked straight out instead of climbing up. When they stepped out of the shaft, Yun Nuoxing felt that his vision was forcibly distorted. When he first walked out, he was still looking at the orange sky, but when he left the tunnel, his vision was facing the dense forest in front of him. He turned around and looked behind him. The surface of a shaft was densely covered with dead branches and leaves. It was suspended in the air and perfectly blended with the surrounding leaves. Even if the entrance was right under their feet, no one would notice that they were stepping on air. Below them was a huge pit with an unknown height. Outside the tunnel was still a forest area, but it wasn't too far from the edge. To the right, they could see a winding and wide river that was faintly discernible in the dense primitive forest. After crossing the river, they would arrive at a flat area. Yun Nuoxing followed the river and saw a normal-sized city that was slightly further away from the primitive forest. Turning around, Yun Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. The primitive forest behind him was also dense with leaves and branches, and the canopy reached the sky. However, it wasn't the same as when they first saw it. It didn't have the feeling of being away from the world, and it didn't have the feeling that no one had set foot on it. It was just a small forest that could be seen everywhere, and there were traces left by people everywhere. We climbed out of the shaft and saw Yun Nuoxing in a daze. He also turned around and looked behind him. After a moment, he exclaimed, "Oh, where did we run to? At least it's not the place that I just saw and thought it was." Yun Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief again. When we were still underground, the spirit that was sent out was searching in the direction of the primeval forest. When we left the underground ruins, it had changed. Teleportation, it should be. But you didn't sense the movement of teleportation, right? Hui nodded. After a while, he waved his hand without hesitation. "Hey, why do you care so much? When dealing with matters related to the origin energy, have you not encountered a few similar situations? Let's not talk about a crappy passage leading me to a strange place. Even if I crawled out a hole and bumped into the void in the next second, I wouldn't feel anything strange at all, let alone a crappy passage." Fengqing Wang and Siyu, who had just climbed out of the shaft, were dumbfounded. They quickly approached Yun Nuoxing and grabbed his arm. Fengqing Wang said nervously, "I won't be thrown into the void in the next second, right?" Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. This girl also knew the power of someone's blessed mouth. Yin Nuo planet had also found the primitive forest through a comprehensive search of this planet. It was not very far away, only about 4,000 to 5,000 miles away. And from the outside, as expected, he could not see the 2 divine palaces, nor could he find the place where the 2 divine palaces were hidden. He remembered that it should be the center of the primitive forest, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not see it from the outside. Even when his gaze pierced through the ground, he could not see the huge underground ruins. He tried to walk back to the underground ruin through the shaft. He stepped on the ground twice and found that it was solid ground. He swept away the fallen leaves. It was really a flat ground. A minute ago, the entrance of the cave was right under his nose. Now, even the shadow of the door was gone. Hui and the other 2 also tested the ground for a while. He even dug a hole in the ground and came to the conclusion that there was indeed no shaft here. It was just an ordinary ground in the forest. "It's nothing. I'm used to it." Yun Nuoxing's face twitched a few times. Siyu also nodded. "Me too. I'm used to it." Anyway, everyone was basically by his side. It was nothing new for them to be passive and actively encounter the origin. It was just that it was a very new experience every time. And sometimes, even if something happened, they were in a state of confusion because they did not feel anything at all. Even the heavenly gods and the heavenly gods of the origin did not feel anything. It was no wonder that Little Star always talked about the origin and called the heavenly gods of the origin ghosts. It was as if they were haunted. The original layout of this planet was very unique. It could be seen clearly from a bird's eye view. With the primitive forest they were in as the center, the surrounding was densely packed forest. After spreading to a certain extent, it would be replaced by another terrain, such as plains, mountains, hills, and so on. Then, after a certain distance, it would be replaced by another terrain. The edges were basically quite uniform, just like a belt. However, there would be overlapping or different terrains between the two terrains. It was not a small number, but it would not destroy the appearance of the whole pattern. As for the human cities, most of them were located in places with relatively flat terrains. Through the passage ahead, he directly sensed that the people who left were now walking out of the forest and were rushing toward the city ahead. It seemed that they were quite accurate in seeing things just now. Not sure if it was related to where they were looking. Forget it, let's not dwell on it. Catching up with them, Lin Sanjiu came to the nearest city. It looked like a small city of a normal scale. According to the standard of the 8 elemental realms, it was not the standard scale of the celestial realm. It was thousands of miles in length and width, which was what a normal city should look like. The small town was built beside the water. Judging from the density of the buildings, it should be continuously built in the direction away from the forest. The whole thing was not a complete circle. It looked like a water droplet. No, why is it a water droplet again? The creation of the origin just now looked like a water droplet. Does this pattern have some special meaning in this world? Taking a closer look, it was not just the city in front of him. Most of the cities and other places seemed to be similar to a water droplet. Even the doll used as a mascot was holding a grayish-white water droplet in its arms. If this had nothing to do with the statue, he would eat the world raw on the spot. The architectural style was not quite the same as what they saw in the heart of the primeval forest. Most of the buildings were built with a mixture of bricks and wood. The proportion of the buildings was low, and there were more than 2 or 3-story houses. There were not too many mansions that occupied a piece of land, and there were fewer decorative items, patterns, and colors. It seemed that even if this world returned to its normal state, it would still be difficult to change its plain appearance. Even some of the larger houses that were suspected to be used by high-level beings did not have too many exquisite decorations. Apart from the plain, grayish-white was the main color of these buildings. This was definitely related to the statue of origin. Other colors were complemented by the other colors, so that they would not be dazzling as far as the eyes could see. Aside from the grayish-white color, there was also purple. This was also related to the energy of origin. However, the colors that were used for daily life, such as clothes and decorations, would not dye the houses grayish-white or purple. There were also normal colors, but the 2 colors were obviously more preferred. In the center of the small city, there was a building with the most unique style. There was no doubt that it was in the shape of a water droplet. It was a grayish-white water droplet that was hundreds of feet tall and looked particularly dazzling. Although they did not know what it was used for, looking at its special position and its unique shape, it was undoubtedly related to the statue of origin. It was quite rare to see a world that revered something related to the heavenly god of origin in the current order void. No, rare was not even enough to describe it. It was basically non-existent. Perhaps there were still people in every world who still remembered the heavenly god of origin, but they would not engrave the traces they left behind into the world as the truth. Now, the only ones who revered the heavenly god of origin the most were probably Sui Feng and the other heirs. As mentioned before, the heavenly god of origin had passed away for a very long time. He could not say for sure how many people in the Order Void had forgotten about the heavenly god of origin. Perhaps 30 to 40%, or perhaps 50 to 60%. However, he knew that the more worlds and timeline worlds were included, the larger the number would be. The further away a world was from the origin world, the easier it would be for them to forget about the heavenly god of origin. This seemed to be the result of I Ching's calculation. Right now, there were more than 10,000 timeline worlds thrown into the origin world, so it was easy to calculate it with some effort. As expected, it's a world left behind from the previous era. Hui looked at the special traces everywhere, his thoughts coinciding with Maple's. Although there was some uncertainty in his words, it was basically certain. Maple, check out the situation regarding the concept of rules. You lazy bum. Yin Nuoxing sighed helplessly. Her soul quickly spread out and went deeper into a more distant place. After a moment, she spoke faintly. The void is sealed from the inside. This has been mentioned before. The rules and the concentration of various energies here are undoubtedly the standards of the lower planes. There's only one world of light in the inner void. There are no traces of chaos or traces of the heavenly god of origin. Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment when she said that. He scratched his head as he listened. There are traces of the heavenly god of origin all over the land, but there is not a trace of the heavenly god of origin in this place. Yin Nuoxing also felt that she might have sensed wrongly. She even went deep into the concept of rules. Confirmed, no. What about the heavenly god of origin that just slipped away? It's no longer here. There's a trace of it slipping away through the void in the conceptual layer of the rules. It flew away directly through the void. Its destination is... Yin Nuoxing muttered as he pinched his long hair. He looked at it for a while before continuing. The direction of the upper plane. The specific location is not clear. Hui grimaced and scratched his head. It can't be exactly what I said, right? Why don't I make it up? All of this is buried. I hope that when they come back, their disappearance even takes away the concept of this world. What remains here is just an empty shell carved all over the earth. It has lost its soul and has lost its meaning. It is just an ornament. Feng Qingwang could not help but say, I seem to feel it again. That strange feeling of being separated from the front and back. There is already a feeling in the outside world, high-level life forms, the most basic ecological civilization. This was the situation in the outside world. The inside world had traces of the heavenly god of origin everywhere, but the most important thing was missing. Let's see what the people of this world have to say. Maybe they have only lost the most important thing, but they still remember it. Siyu pulled Yin Nuoxing and sped up. As they walked, she said, Anyway, we can't think of anything even if we continue to think. The clothes worn by the local heavenly god of origin were quite different from theirs. However, they were too lazy to change their clothes. After all, they had not changed their clothes for 5 years. At this time, they just needed to let the cognitive blur take effect. After a little dressing, the four of them swaggered into the small town without attracting too much attention. Feng, if the traces related to the heavenly god of origin disappear, what will happen? Hui looked at the people around him and suddenly said a sentence without rhyme or reason. Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. She narrowed her eyes and said, Tell me the specific situation. I can't explain it to you if you tell me the situation alone. It is the situation that I just mentioned. Suppose this world originally had the heavenly god of origin. One day, these things that should have existed were implicated because the highest existence suddenly disappeared, and the concept was lost. Stop. Yin Nuoxing stopped him from continuing. Although the heavenly god of origin and the others had passed away, they did not cause such a phenomenon. However, there are many theories about the loss of the concept of the heavenly god of origin, and given the place we are in, there is one theory that is most appropriate. We understood at once that they were within the domain of the concept body of chaos, and the greatest possibility was its influence. The tide of chaos. The full-blown tide of chaos has almost wiped away all concepts related to the heavenly god of origin, be it the concept imprinted in the void or the concept known by all living beings. All were wiped clean. However, the fragments and fragments were left behind, and things that were of the same level could not be destroyed by the tide of chaos, which could not cause substantial damage. Therefore, while things related to the heavenly God of origin still remain, the concept of the heavenly God of origin has vanished from the knowledge of all living beings. It was something that could no longer be known, even if it existed before everyone's eyes, even if it appeared clearly before everyone's eyes, even if some people recognized it as some ancient creation passed down from ancient times or subconsciously caused something to assume such a form out of instinct. There was no way to know what it actually was or what it meant. That was why the temple deep in the forest was left in a state of permanent abandonment. After all, no one knew that the most important thing to them was left in a corner of this world. Chapter 18:15. The definition of life and death was neither simple nor complex. First of all, the death of oneself, the cessation of one's vital functions, the dissipation of one's spirit, and the annihilation of one's soul. For ordinary life forms, they were already dead. However, for energy life forms, perhaps there was still some consciousness left. Well, there was still a bit of consciousness that hadn't dissipated yet. It was hung in a special space, waiting to be resurrected. The greatest benefit of energy life forms was that they didn't have to worry about dying and coming back to life. No, although he was also an energy life form, he wasn't as crazy as Maple. Most energy life forms weren't as dangerous as Maple. Ordinary people wouldn't want to experience the feeling of dying and coming back to life. I'm getting off topic. His own death was only the first level. It was said that some people died, but he was still alive. Let's not talk about things that were too advanced. To put it simply, this was a mark left behind by a life form. The sturdy mark could withstand the erosion of time. The stubborn mark stubbornly persisted in the world, and the weaker mark could disappear in the blink of an eye along with his own death. In the end, nothing was left behind. It didn't matter if it was as small as the effect he had on those around him or other life forms in the world, or as large as the effect he had on the world or the void. If even these had disappeared and all memories of the void had completely disappeared, then that person was truly dead and couldn't be any colder. The void would treat it as if this person had never existed. He had said so much just to express that the heavenly God of origin and the others had died, but hadn't completely disappeared. Yep, at least that was how the external void of order looked like. They were gone, but the things they left behind still affected the entire void of order. No, it should be said that the existence of the void of order itself was the greatest mark they left behind. Even if no one in the entire void of order knew of their names, even if no one in the entire void of order knew of them, and even if all traces of their creations were erased by the void, as long as the void of order still existed, their creations would not disappear, and they wouldn't be completely annihilated. This was the case for the external void. As for the internal void, it was indeed somewhat illusory. He couldn't see it clearly and didn't understand it. No, still nothing. Yin Nuoxing raised her head and looked at Hui, who was rummaging through the bookcase and muttering like he was complaining. She blinked her eyes and rolled up the scroll in her hand and put it back on the bookcase next to her. This is the place where other people's documents are stored. Don't make it too messy. Hui turned his head and grinned at him. Then he turned back and grabbed the bookcase in front of him with both hands. The floor was full of scrolls, books, and some kind of energy crystal that recorded information. It was a mess. Yin Nuoxing looked out of the window, her eyes following the winding river into the distance. After a while, she looked away. They were in the most peculiar building in this small town. Well, it was that droplet-shaped building. At first, she thought it would be some kind of historical site, and unauthorized people were not allowed to enter. After arriving, she saw that the local life went in and out. It should be a public place. Sure enough, it was a place where the information of this world was stored. It was a library. However, for this kind of public information, how much could be read, how much could be believed, and how much could be taken seriously? They didn't know everything. They just wanted to try their luck and see if they could find anything related to them. Anything would do. Crackle, 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 walla walla boom, clang. This was like the sound of the entire bookshelf being slapped over, making Yin Nuoxing's cheeks jump slightly. As soon as he turned his head, he saw Hui even more frantically flipping through and throwing all the information recorded here on the bookshelf. Books, scrolls, and energy crystals flew all over the sky. Fortunately, this place was not a lively place, and there are not many people. Otherwise, even if they had a vague understanding, they would have been thrown out. Little Star, Siyu and Fengqing Huang came sneakily from the side aisle. "How is it?" Siyu looked back at Fengqing Huang and nodded. She whispered, "Probably found it. It's in this building. But we have to go through at least one teleportation. We didn't go in rashly." "Okay." Yin Nuoxing tidied up the books on the floor and patted Huey's back. "Stop fooling around. The thing we are looking for may not be here. Let's go somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" Hui was stunned for a moment. The things that he had thrown all over the sky like trash hit his head. He hurriedly used a few seconds to tidy them up, although the positions were all wrong. "Where?" Siyu pointed up and said, "Over there." This water droplet-like building was divided into several floors. They were on the first to the fifth floor, which was probably the public area open to the public. However, he found that there was a huge space above. He asked the two girls to explore and see if they could find a way. Well, even without exploring, they knew that this building was 1,000 feet tall. It was impossible to say that it was solid. There must be something inside. It was just that they couldn't get to it by normal means. She followed the two girls to a place where there were fewer people. She arrived in front of a smooth and tidy wall. She looked left and right to make sure that there was no one around. Then, she stretched out her hand and gently pushed the wall in front of her away, revealing a narrow passageway behind her. As she walked into the passageway, the sound from the outside suddenly weakened. This place is well hidden. There is still some weak energy left on the door. No one will notice this place, but it won't stop us, Siyu said in a low voice. After walking for a while, they reached the end of the passage. There was a gray-white door in front of them. There was also an energy seal on it. Fengqing Huang walked up to it and destroyed the weak energy seal. The four of them walked into the building. It was obviously not open to the public. When they walked through the door, Yin Nuoxing looked up and saw a gray-white and purple water droplet pattern on the door frame. This thing could be found everywhere. Look, it's right in front. Judging from the direction of the energy flow, it should be going up. I just don't know where it's going. Siyu ran up and said. Behind the secret door was a hall about 10 feet wide. There was a water droplet in the middle of the hall. Why is it this thing again? Yin Nuoxing almost took out the Netherworld Ruin sword. Hui laughed dryly and walked up to take a look. There is no origin energy. It's just an ordinary energy crystal. It's just shaped like this. Below the water droplet, there was a complete energy formation on the ground. It looked like a magic circle. All the energy came from the formation and the energy crystal. Just as Siyu said, the energy flow was going up. Hui stretched out his hand and waved above the energy array. He turned around and nodded at the three of them. There are traces of someone who has been here. The traces are quite fresh. In addition, there are layers upon layers of defense, and it is hidden so well. It is probably used to hide some secrets. Yin Nuoxing stood on the energy formation and touched the water droplet. It didn't take her much effort to decipher the energy flow. She nodded to Hui and the others. Come on, let's go up and see what's going on. When Hui and the two girls stood up, Yin Nuoxing began to mobilize the energy in the water droplet crystal. The power of space gathered, and the energy began to gather around them. The white light in front of his eyes was shining brightly. He sensed the energy around him, and just as he was about to mobilize the energy flow to perform a fixed-point teleportation, he was suddenly stunned. This thing can only teleport randomly. The moment Hui Gang opened his mouth, his eyes were already flooded by the light. His body trembled slightly, and his feet touched the ground in an instant. They were all stunned, and simultaneously looked at the scene in front of them as the light dissipated. There was still a hall in front of them, but it was much more spacious than the hall with only one teleportation formation. It was full of things. Yes, it was a pile. As far as the eye could see, there were collapsed bookcases, scrolls, and old books on the ground. It looked like a small mountain. The weak energy light beam from above reflected the dust floating in the air. It was pushed away by their arrival and drifted in all directions. Oh, luckily, I thought we would see dozens of people charging at us. Hui patted his chest and then looked at phone. Didn't you check it first? Well, I did check it. Yin Nuashing pursed her lips. But when we really gathered the energy, we found that the energy flow was a little abnormal. The teleportation formation itself was a little damaged. There was no way to fix it. We could only teleport according to the place it remembered. Okay, we took the lead and walked out of the small room of the teleportation array. He walked in a hall in front and looked at the ground that was filled with 5 small mountains of books. He could not help but say, "No one has been here for a long time. There is no trace of life left. God knows how long it has been forgotten." Siyu picked up an energy crystal under her feet and tried to check the information left in it. Unfortunately, the energy in the crystal had dissipated by 90%, leaving only some vague information that was hard to piece together. She glanced at it and threw it on the ground. "But didn't you say that the teleportation array showed signs of being used recently?" Hui scratched his head. "Someone came to the teleportation formation, but I didn't say that anyone really got on the teleportation formation. Maybe those people know that there is such a teleportation formation, but they don't know how to use it. They can only try to use it. According to the situation of this world split, I think the possibility is quite high. See you. Okay. Phone, where did you teleport to? Where are we in this building?" We looked around the space, trying to find some marks or something like that. But the whole hall only had the 5 piles of books in front of them. There was nothing in other places. Not on the wall, not on the ground, not on the ceiling. "Probably, I can't see it." Yin Nuashing opened her eyes. She could not see it directly from the outside. The inside should be an expanded space. It is not the same as what you see from the outside. There is no way to make a comparison. Even if you want to confirm it, you can only recognize a vague position. According to the rules and power of the space where we are now, compared to the whole space, well, we should be at the bottom 1/3 of the top floor. It's not that I didn't expect it. The things placed here had a long history, so much so that more than 90% of the records had turned into mosaics. At a glance, it looked like a pool of ink. The handwriting was so blurry that it could not be seen. Even the things recorded in the energy crystals were more or less the same. They were all a mess. These things had been eroded by time. Hui sighed and threw down the hundreds of things he was holding in his hands, making a clattering sound. "Let's go to the next place, shall we? There is nothing valuable here." Yin Nuashing nodded. He had just finished recording the information of this space. If he recorded a few more spaces, he might be able to get a feel of the overall shape of this space. From a careful point of view, he did not think that the teleportation array could go to all the places in this space. For example, the bottom level of the realm of the gods was the same situation. Even if the conceptual layer of the rules of the realm of the gods was destroyed and was swung around like a public toilet, there were some places that no one could enter without the permission of the heart of the world and Huey's permission. Even a high-level primeval could not enter. After the light of the energy array, the place where they came to this time, Hui patted phone, about 1/10 of the place from the top floor. It is close to the top floor. Hui scratched his head. Can't this broken thing be controlled by itself? It doesn't take much effort to break the energy array, but to break it by force. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. Maybe it is related to the origin of things, so there's no need to use this method. That is true. God knows if this thing has anything to do with the god of origin. Just by looking at the shape of the building, they could not tell whether it was built by the people who worshipped the god of origin, or built according to their will, or built according to some kind of instructions. Or maybe there was something related to the god of origin hidden here. They thought that the statue without the energy of origin and the rules of origin was definitely not related to the god of origin. Who knew that a creation of the god of origin would jump out of it? This made them more cautious about the things in this world. It was fun to destroy things, but it would not be fun to get a pile of trash after doing it. The hall of 1/10 of the top floor was empty. There was some black dust floating in the air. Other than that, there was only a sense of death. There was nothing else. There is nothing. Shall we go to the next place? See, you shook Yin Nuoxing's arm. Let's go, let's go. Hui also waved his hand and turned his head. This was a completely empty hall. However, the appearance of each hall seemed to be completely different. The previous hall was square in shape, and the hall in front of him was hemispherical. There was nothing else other than that. There is something here. Yin Nuoxing pulled Siyu and pointed into the hall. Didn't you notice? There's a trace of something left here. Siyu was creeped out by his words. She quickly hid behind him. Hui and Feng Qinghuang's faces trembled. When the three of them felt that there was nothing in the hall, he said that there was something here. It sounded like a ghost story, but the hall in front of them was really empty. Yin Nuoxing stretched out his right hand and gently scooped the air. Energy surged and a gust of wind swept up in the hall. Then, the energy swept up the air in the hall and compressed it in his palm. Black dust gathered in his palm and slowly pieced together from trillions of dust particles into a stone lump the size of a thumb. A stone lump with a bumpy surface looked a little awkward. There's really something here. Huey's face twitched a few times. He leaned forward and stared at the rock. What is it? It has broken into dust and scattered evenly in the air. Yin Nuoxing looked at it carefully. The origin energy surged in his body for a moment. Then he said, Annihilation Energy Crystal. Dong! Hui slapped the guardian's shield in front of him. Thanks to his thunderous actions, Siyu and Feng Qinghuang were ready to fight as well. It is completely cooled. There is no energy reaction. So, don't be so nervous. Hui laughed dryly and kept it. The two girls stuck out their tongues and leaned forward again. Feng Qinghuang whispered, Cooled annihilation energy? Annihilation energy can cool down? It is not just annihilation energy. The origin energy will cool down too. However, it is not a normal cooling. Yin Nuoxing thought for a while and frowned. Actually, the saying that energy crystals do not cool down is just a quote from them. Hui, the saying of the origin heavenly god. Oh, Yin Nuoxing nodded slightly. If the energy inside a crystal formed by the condensation and compression of energy completely dissipates, it will only have a fragile shell left. It will collapse with a light flick of the finger. Cooled energy crystals have not dissipated, but they have all lost their activity. Energy crystals without energy reaction. Hui scratched his chin. It is not a low reaction state, but a situation where there is no activity at all. It is like being frozen? Ah, yes. You can understand it as the energy being frozen. Yin Nuoxing nodded. However, this is only limited to one situation. There is only one situation where an energy crystal with a large amount of energy can be completely frozen. Order and chaos fighting, and it is a fight to the death. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Both sides are evenly matched. The energy left is just right. Just enough so that they will not completely go berserk and will not naturally dissipate after fighting for a while. It is just enough so that they can continue to beat each other with extremely weak vitality. After a long time, they have become this thing. This is the remains left behind after they beat each other up. Since it shows the activity of annihilation energy, then the annihilation energy should have one. Hui suddenly raised his hand. You seem to have omitted 10,000 words just now. That part is almost the same whether I say it or not. Do you want to hear it? Yin Nuoxing looked at the curious faces of the trio and sighed helplessly. Then let's put it simply. When the energies of order and chaos slap each other in the mouth, the tangled energy will attempt to devour it. Forget it. Order and chaos are just origin energy and annihilation energy. The void cannot afford to provoke them, but its instincts are telling it to provoke those two deadly things. As it interferes, it becomes a 2-versus-1 fight. The void is a pitiful creature that was innocently dragged into it. It could only retreat to the edge and cool down for a long time, becoming the shell of this special energy crystal. Inside, the two energies are still beating each other up. Even if the world is destroyed, it has nothing to do with them until the annihilation energy wins and occupies the cooled void shell, assimilates it, and solidifies it. It should have been devoured by the massive amount of void energy in its solidified state, but it has been trapped by the void shell. The void shell has also been transformed into the shape of annihilation energy and still carries the presence of the void, preventing it from being further devoured by the void. That is why it is left behind in this state. It will not disappear for a while, but after several metamorphoses, it is not a solid object and cannot be devoured by the void, but it can be destroyed in the physical realm. Yin Nuoxing suddenly paused as a certain type of origin energy swirled in her eyes. After a moment, she raised a finger and said, "Excerpt from 10,000 Situations of Conflict Between Order Energy and Chaos Energy. Author, a certain heavenly origin god who does not wish to leave his name. Audience, heavenly origin gods and above. Hui, see you, and Feng Qing Wang. Good guy, this is really good. These heavenly origin gods are really good guys." Also, although he said that it was order energy and chaos energy, the heavenly god of origin, who didn't want to give his name, added that the two voids each have one type of energy. Needless to say, he was referring to the origin energy and annihilation energy. Only these two types of energy are qualified to make the voids not dare to provoke them. And the most suitable place to form this kind of crystal is the place where the two parties have just finished fighting each other. Moreover, this is in the void. If the residual energy is left in the void, it will become like this. Hui scratched his cheek in a daze. Feng, do you often talk to the heavenly origin gods, remnant soul? Talk to... Yin Nuoxing's voice stiffened and his face darkened. Talk to the devil? Talk to the devil? That's one-sided harassment. It's mental pollution. It's an indescribable thing. That's simply... He pressed his chest and took a deep breath to calm himself down. Something like that. But I haven't heard their voices recently. Perhaps it's because I haven't been in contact with them much. We felt that something was wrong. By the way, when exactly do you mean recently? 100 years ago? 10 years ago? A year ago? Oh, about 3 epochs ago. Hui, see you, and Feng Qing Wang all took a deep breath. Good guy, other people's recently was a period of time. Even if immortal beings like them had lived for a long time and had a weak sense of time, they would at most measure time in terms of 10,000 years. This guy was even more impressive. 3 epochs was considered recent in his sense of time. Forget it. Let's not dwell on this. So this lump. Hui resisted the urge to say the word booger. His handsome face turned red as he forced himself to change his words. What's the use of this lump? It's just a special specimen. It's useless. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and paused after a second. She thought for a while and said, "Oh, not really. We can use this to estimate the time. The time it takes to form and the time it takes to collapse and turn into dust can be roughly estimated. The error is within 10 million years. However, based on the conditions of this place, the error of 1 epoch shouldn't be a problem. If everything goes well, we may be able to calculate how long this world has existed. Give me 2 minutes." The flowing origin energy condensed into a magic circle between her palms. The center was aimed at the lump of booger. 2 minutes of quiet waiting passed quickly. The energy dissipated. Yin Nuoxing opened her eyes. Her expression was a little strange and a little stiff. The 3 of them were very nervous when they saw her expression. Let's go back to the beginning, to the time when the crystal first formed. The situation is smoother than I thought, and the error is not as big as I thought. At most, it's only 1 year. Hui swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Yes, when Yin Nuoxing exhaled softly. The end of the 39th epoch. The last period of the end of the mythological era. The last period of the war. Chapter 1816. None of them knew the specifics of the war at the end of the mythological era. All they knew was a simple description of the entire scene. The war between order and chaos. That was all. At most, they would add a date. For example, it started from the 33rd era. As for when the war started, or when they started preparing for the war, they were not sure. They did not know much. Sui Feng and the others were sealed during the war, so they only knew a part of it. There was no way for them to know the rest of it. Therefore, this could be the closest thing they had found to the war a remnant, a trace left on the battlefield, a small stone that came from the end of the 39th era. So you could not help speaking, breaking the silence. This place wouldn't be. The little girl did not finish her sentence, but Yin Nuashing knew what she meant. He continued, this is probably the last place left behind from that battle. It was left behind in a hurry during the war. At least, it is the closest thing to that point in time compared to all the things related to the origin that I have come into contact with so far. Left behind in haste at the end of the war? What could it be? We scratch his head at that. What could it be that would require them to divert their attention to create an entire void domain during the most urgent of times? Come to think of it, if they were fighting at the front line of the void and wanted to torment the front line, well, it was unimaginable. They were basically so busy fighting the underworld that they would have the time to run circles and carry out other tasks. It was purely because the underworld was doing something that slowed down the assault here. Moreover, the underworld could not compare to the chaos concept bodies. Once they fought against order, they would easily mobilize the power of the entire chaotic void. They were not like the underworld, who were fence-sitters with little things on both sides. Well, there was no way to put it. A void region that was created. Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes. Did they create this place? But have you forgotten that this is the domain of the chaos concept bodies? We sensed it when we came in. We paused. That's a little weird. They could not say that this place was left behind by the chaos concept bodies, could they? Those fellows who only knew how to beat the Order Void to death still wanted to leave something in the Order Void? He felt that it was unlikely. The domain of the chaos concept body is indeed there, but it should not be just that. It is also related to the heavenly god of origins and the origin energy. Maple, do you think that this is the place where they once fought? Then, they were pushed to the far reaches of the lower plane. For some unknown reason, this place became a relatively complete void region, including the upper, middle, and lower planes. For example, this void territory was originally in the upper plane or the middle plane. It was a battlefield that encompassed 3 planes. In the end, it was either the origin heavenly god or the chaos concept body who took action. The entire void territory was dismantled and thrown to the lower plane. Don't you think it sounds exciting? Yin Nuashing pursed her lips. No, not at all. It even sounds a little troublesome. However, it's not impossible. But what's the reason? And why? How? How would I know? I'm just saying whatever comes to mind. Hui scratched his head and smiled bitterly. He was not an encyclopedia like Maple and could only think of certain things. For the time being, he would think along a direction if his brain was fine, but it would be too difficult for him to explain the cause and effect. At present, the entire void territory had traces of chaos. However, the strangest thing was that this was the Order Void, but the domain of the chaos concept bodies. The general environment followed the Order Void's rules and had nothing to do with the chaos void. However, the feeling it exuded from every part of the void made them feel that this was the chaos void and that a chaos concept body was hiding. It was ridiculous in every aspect. Yin Nuashing looked at the bumpy ball in her hand and squinted at it. She then placed it on her palm and turned it back and forth, sighing softly. Little star, is this thing still useful? Siyu heard the sigh and turned her head. Seeing that Hui had been staring at the ball in his hand, she was very curious and thought that he had thought of something again. No, it's useless. It's just a specimen, a mark. It records that it was once in a place full of chaos and battles. Being able to use it to trace back time is already the only use it has. Yin Nuashing shook her head lightly. The information recorded by the heavenly god of origin was very clear. This thing was a mark. As long as it existed, it meant that there had been a battle between order and chaos. The scale was a battle between the origin energy and the annihilation energy. How small could the scale be? We turned to look at Maple and saw that he was frowning and sighing again. He walked over and patted him on the shoulder. All right, Maple, let's go look at other places. We won't be able to find it even if we stay here. He paused halfway and looked warily at the hemispherical hall that was completely empty. There's really nothing this time, right? Yin Nuashing shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry when she saw that he was afraid that something would pop out of his mouth again. There's really nothing this time. Don't worry. I noticed the dust floating in the air because it told me. The origin energy? Yin Nuashing nodded. If it was him, he would not have noticed some black dust floating in the air. He would not have known that it was a thing. It was the origin energy that said it in his mind. That's right, her energy said it. That's why he knew. After confirming that the hall was of no value this time, Yin Nuashing left a mark on the spot, and the four of them returned to the place where the energy array was. They looked back at the hall. It was dead and empty. It was so empty that it made them feel annoyed. He only looked at it for a moment before he activated the energy array again. White light quickly filled the space around them and teleported them once again. After the familiar scene changed, the white light in front of them dissipated. This time, what appeared in front of them was a small door. They were in a rather small hall. There was only an energy array in the hall. Yin Nuashing looked around and was startled. We're back to square one. Back to square one so soon? The probability of teleportation is too strange, isn't it? Hui smiled bitterly. They were really unlucky to be back to square one after a few twists and turns. Yin Nuashing activated the energy array again and changed the scene again. This time, they came to a wider space. He walked out of the small teleportation room and took the lead to say where they were. We're in the middle. It should be slightly above. This teleportation place is really strange. One moment we're at the top, and the next moment we're in the middle. We could not help but say. The hall was a very strange spiral. Standing in the small teleportation room, looking out from the door, it was like looking up from the bottom of the spiral. In other words, the floor, walls, and ceiling of the entire hall were twisted in a clockwise direction. It looked like a few floating ribbons were twisted into a fry dough twist. It looked like a twisted shape. The wall on the left looked like the floor tiles, while the ceiling went to their right. Wow, this... Siyu exclaimed. I feel a little dizzy just looking at it. There was a slight buzzing sound of energy in all directions of the distorted room. It seemed like something was hiding behind them. However, Yin Nuashing could see clearly that there was nothing in the space. This strange buzzing sound. The distorted space itself has been solidified. The distorted space made the rules let out a little resisting sound. They wanted to return to their original state, but there was no way to do so. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and brushed the space beside him. He could feel the wailing sound of the rules. Normally, there would not be such a situation when the rules were manipulated. This should be a situation where the distortion was forced and brute force was used to smash the space. This looks like a passage, right? Hui stared at the front of the distorted point and stepped on the ground half a meter above the floor of the small room. Well, no problem. Let's go and take a look. The spiral corridor, it was not a spiral upwards, but a spiral forward. The feeling of walking on this kind of ground was actually quite subtle. Their left foot and right foot were one high and one low. When they walked, they straightened their body and tilted their head to make sure that they were looking in the right direction. The entire spiral corridor was probably dozens of meters long. When they reached the end, the space in front of them had returned to normal. It was a large circular room with some strange objects of unknown purpose. It looked like a laboratory, but more like a garbage dump. It really did look like a garbage dump. The strange objects were piled up 7 or 8 meters high. There was a pile on the left and a pile on the right, occupying half of the room. Then this room also had a spiral. This time it was a room that spiraled upwards. The ceiling extended upwards. The scene was similar to the path they walked. This time, it was a spiral that rose to the sky. There were faint traces of energy flow above. It had stayed here for a long time and did not dissipate into the void. It's the energy that maintains the distortion in this room. Yin Nuashing looked at the scattered energy floating on the ceiling. She finally understood why the rules here made such a tragic cry. This is an amorphous space. It uses energy to maintain its appearance. When you want to change it, you can change it at any time according to your wishes. Once the energy is exhausted, this room will return to its original appearance. Hui looked at the ceiling and thought for a moment. He walked into the garbage dump in front of him and rummaged for something. After a while, he made the already messy room even messier. Dust flew everywhere, and some things that had been worn out by time were taken out and thrown aside. Among them, the most things were unsurprisingly the kind of thing that looked like a water droplet model. Siyu and Feng Qing Wang looked for a while and came forward to help, hoping to find something useful. Feng, come and take a look at this. Hui suddenly raised his arm high in the garbage dump and shook it. Yin Nuoxing walked over the garbage dump and landed beside Hui. She took the thing that Hui handed to her and put it on her hand. It was a water droplet crystal. The energy inside had not completely dissipated. The things recorded in it should still exist. There should be something stored in it. Let me try to open it. Yin Nuoxing said. Origin energy surged in her eyes, and she tried to open the old box. After a while, she succeeded. The process was so smooth that she felt it was unbelievable. It's open. The seal is not very strong. She lifted the water droplet crystal and let it float in front of her. Then, rays of light shone in the surrounding space with it as the center. Immediately, light screens appeared and then quickly dissipated. It's been stored for too long. Even if there is something stored in it, it will be difficult to extract it. We scratched his head. He was not particularly surprised. Don't worry, there should be something intact. After all, it has a part of its energy. Yin Nuoxing waved a few times to let the water droplet crystal continue to project light screens in the space. It seemed that she was sifting through the information stored in it. After a while, she finally saw a light screen that did not dissipate immediately. It stabilized in the space, and an image began to appear in the center of the light screen. The image was clear, and a statue appeared. The statue was leaning against the throne with its face propped up. We turned to look at Feng, who had a stiff face. Although there is something, Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. She continued to move the water droplet crystal. However, there was nothing else reflected in the light screen. All the light screens collapsed quickly when they were about to take shape. In the end, only the image of the statue was left. Her face turned a little pale. That's it, more or less. Hui spread his hands. But there is no hurry. Since there is something that still retains information from the past, there should be something else that also retains information from that time. Let's look for it first. Yin Nuoxing frowned as she looked at the image of the statue. The more she looked, the more she felt that something was not right. The statue in the image in front of her was holding something in its right hand. It was a ball-like object, but it looked like a hedgehog. It was a ball with spikes. Hui, look at its hand. Yin Nuoxing tugged at Hui, who was looking for something in the image. There is an extra ball in its hand. Hui blinked and said, the statue we saw did not have this ball in its hand. Is it incomplete? God knows what happened. Yin Nuoxing shook her head. She looked at the image for a while. After confirming that it would not cause any trouble, she waved her hand and let it disappear. She looked at the huge garbage pile beside her and was silent for a while. Just as she was about to help search, Siyu suddenly shouted and walked over quickly. She put the same water droplet crystal in his hand and turned around to continue to dive into the garbage pile. The image projected in the crystal this time was the appearance of this world. It was a bird's eye view. They could see the ground spreading out in circles. After a while, the image fell down and approached a city below. They saw the biggest building in the shape of a water droplet. Then, the line of sight turned and entered the inside. Several images flashed by. It was the hall inside the building that they had just seen. Finally, a cloud of black fog appeared. The image ended here. Yin Nuoxing lowered her head and her right hand touched her chin. She pondered for a while and seemed to understand something. This should be a concept space. It is not a space that is independent of a place. Hui turned his head. Is it similar to the spaces hidden in the realm of the gods? Yes, but the concept space here is projected into the real world through this water droplet building. It is like my observer space. I can create it where I am and project it into the real world so that people other than me can enter. The space inside this building is therefore not fixed. The so-called stratification is just a transmission up and down on the spatial level. The height that I sensed also corresponds to it. The height of the concept space projected by this building means how many levels there are in total. Oh, I understand now. No wonder someone left fresh traces at the entrance, but no one has been here before. We clapped his hands to show that he understood. They don't even remember how to open the door. The concept space god had to use a certain method to squeeze in, and the heavenly origin god could enter unimpeded. They must have lost the key. Yes, that is very reasonable. There is no problem. Feng Qing Wang could not help but smile bitterly. In the end, the sense of fragmentation in this world did not weaken at all. What should be lost and what should be missing, nothing was left behind. Little star, Qing Wang, Lord Hui, come take a look. At this time, Siyu suddenly shouted at the top of her voice. The three of them shrunk their necks and quickly went over to take a look. Siyu had arranged a table in front of her. On the table was a crystal droplet of the same design. But this time, the crystal droplet was glowing without anyone touching it. What was projected on the table was a series of images of battles, images of fireworks in the void. They had seen so many of them that they could recognize them without any explanation. Although the battle before them was also a battle between order and chaos. The two parties involved in the battle represented the group of people and things with the highest standards in the previous era. But unfortunately, they could only see the crackling of energy on the image. They could not see anything else. They could not see anyone, no life. It was as if the only thing that was allowed to be recorded was energy. I can't see anyone. Hui put his face in front of the image. His eyes were wide open, but he could not see anything clearly. He kept muttering, I can't see anything. I can't see anything at all. I am a mid-tier premier, but I can't see anything in the battle. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes at him. In the battle of the mythological era, the ones at the bottom were probably all high-level premier. Didn't you see that Sui Feng and the others were thrown out? They are only mid-tier premier, and you're only a mid-tier premier. What do you think you can do? And maybe the Order warriors on the side of the battle are all equipped with origin energy. It would be strange if you could see it. Hui smiled bitterly and patted his head. That's true. Can you see it? Yin Nuoxing stepped forward and tried to use her own vision. She even used her origin energy to look for a long time. She came to a conclusion. Sorry, I don't deserve it. They usually go all out in battle. All kinds of energy are wrapped around their bodies. It would be strange if I could see it. Hui scratched his head hard. This is not scientific. I don't deserve it because I'm only a mid-tier premier. Maple, you are a master of origin energy. You have 196 types of origin energy. How can you not be qualified? Yin Nuoxing's body stiffened. She slowly turned her head and looked at him with a sad expression. She gritted her teeth. I'm just a trash pinnacle of origin. I am so sorry. The three of them held their heads and did not say a word. Their eyes flashed. This was the biggest joke in the void. The strongest in the void of order. No, they could not tell. After all, Maple had not gone all out for a long time. But who would dare to say that he was really a pinnacle of origin? He could swallow that person alive. Although he looked like a pinnacle of origin, but with his origin energy alone, Maple was not a person to be trifled with. It was just that it was a little awkward that he was only at the pinnacle of origin. Now, most of the fighting power in the Void front line was at the pinnacle of origin. The pinnacle was already at the mid-level of origin. The next level was at the beginner level of origin. Only Maple was still at the pinnacle of origin. Well, it sounded sad. It was all that Chi's fault. The only time he appeared, he broke the most powerful lance in the world of order. Now, he could only fight with 2 sticks. The scene ended when the atmosphere was extremely awkward. Yin Nuoxing sighed bitterly. She walked over and was about to take a look at the crystal droplet. The scene in front of her shook a few times, and her hand paused. A few seconds later, a tall young man with long hair and wearing a majestic battle robe appeared in the scene. He stared ahead as if he was staring at something. Wow, this one can be seen clearly. Siyu exclaimed. She carefully hid behind Yin Nuoxing. Is it the heavenly god of origin? Is it the heavenly god of origin? No, it shouldn't be. Yin Nuoxing shook her head. Unless the heavenly god of origin's real body appears in front of us, like the clone of the heavenly god of origin we saw in Suifeng's world. Otherwise, we can't recognize their face. Generally speaking, when we see images related to them in other places, we only see them as a human-shaped white light. We crossed his arms. However, although it's not the heavenly god of origin, it should be related to the heavenly god of origin. Ah, he seems to want to say something. The person in the scene let out a sigh of relief, took 2 steps back, turned his eyes to other places, and then slowly said, Yin Nuashing and the other 3 were speechless. Damn it, they couldn't understand it. Damn it, why did it have to be the first divine language? Damn it, it should be the end of the mythological era. The common language of all races had been popularized. Why couldn't it be spoken? We couldn't help but slap his forehead. I only hope that Jing Yun and the others are awake at this time. It's only the first divine language that we can't handle. Yin Nuashing sighed. We can't. Chapter 1817. The earliest divine language was a very distressing thing. Those who did not live in the mythological era, or to be more specific, the earliest period of the mythological era, or perhaps the chaos era, probably did not know the earliest divine language. That was why they felt their heads go hot and dizzy when they heard the language. They could only look at the young man in the image, who was blabbering and swearing. They could not understand what he was talking about at all. There were 3 languages in the mythological era. The first was the earliest divine language. The second was the language of the mythological era. And the third was the universal language of all races that was popularized in the later period. The changes in the 3 languages seemed to be engraved with the changes of the times. Perhaps they could see the slow change of order in the era of order. Now in the void, only 2 groups of people could communicate in the earliest divine language. Suifeng's group of inheritors and Jing Yun's group of forgotten combatants in the corner of the void. Not to mention the earliest divine language. He and Maple could still handle the language of the mythological era. After all, it was a lump that fell from the world core of the divine realm. Unfortunately, the one in front of them was the earliest divine language. The young man in the picture was still chattering away, saying words that were neither human nor ghost. The 4 of them felt a headache coming on as they listened to him. We could not bear to look at it. He covered his face and said, Maple, turn it off. I'm having a headache. Yin Nuashing walked over and pressed down on the crystal droplet. He used a little bit of energy to make the projected image in the space dissipate. He stored it in his soul and said, Take it back and let Jing Yun and the others listen to it. We can't deal with it. Hui smiled bitterly and scratched his head. He could not help but murmur. The earliest divine language, the traces of the mythological era's passing. No matter when, there's always a faint sadness when listening to it. What was there to be sad about? Was it the passing of the era, or their passing as a representative of the era? They did not know, but they knew that no matter when they heard the earliest divine language, there was a faint sadness in their hearts. Perhaps it was because they were from the divine realm. Yin Nuashing looked at him and asked, Sadness? Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Hui sighed and spread his hands. But even I don't know what I'm regretting. Is it the passing of the previous era, or... Phew, forget it. Let's not talk about it here. Let's get down to business. Since he could find some kind of record left behind by someone related to the heavenly god of origins, although he could only hear him swearing, there should be something else here. This messy garbage dump probably corresponds to the bottom of the concept layer of rules, where countless pieces of information from the past were deposited. Thinking about it this way, the indistinguishable things in the garbage could be information that was too heavy to be extracted. Perhaps the 4 of them were busy rummaging through the garbage dump in the room. They found more water droplets one after another. As they expected, there was a lot of information about this inner world. Yin Nuashing activated them one by one and read the information inside. Astronomy, geography, ancient studies, cultivation system. Ah, this hasn't changed. It's still the same. And then, oh, there's nothing worth paying attention to. Next, it was not that there was nothing worth paying attention to. ancient studies, which was the history of this planet. Well, it was probably the history of this part of life. According to some small records from various aspects, they had existed here for hundreds of millions of years. And that was just what they had recorded. There must have been a history of a broken era. As for those that were not recorded, the traces of the traceability rule could be traced back to 10 or 20 years ago. Maybe you're right. Yin Nuoxing looked at the time that was told by the traceability rule and narrowed his eyes. The earliest time that we can trace back to the previous era. Maybe, as you said, this world was thrown here from there. We looked up from the garbage dump. Is there any record of the coordinates of the void, the change of the rule of the world's migration? No, not at all. Either it has been washed clean, or it has always been in this position, drifting slowly with the flow of the void. The range is not large, so there was no change of the rule at all. Also, there are no traces of the tide of chaos here. Their research over the past 5 epochs, which was actually the information accumulated over 5 epochs and analyzed in the last half an epoch, allowed them to clearly feel the traces left behind by the tide of chaos. They could easily find it in any conceptual layer of rules, as long as it existed. Hui was startled. He looked up and threw a puzzled look. What's going on? In such a large area, only the knowledge of the primordial god has been erased. How could there be no trace of the destruction caused by the tide of chaos? Maybe it's another kind of destruction that we don't know about. Yin Nuoxing sighed and shook his head. There was more trouble. The tide of chaos broke out at the moment of the beginning of this era. Well, it might be a little later. It did not break out in seconds. It just vaguely pointed to that time. And the rule of time recorded in this world points to nearly 20 years ago. That time has nothing to do with the tide of chaos. Things that happened around the 36th era might not necessarily be related to things that happened in the 40th era. Especially for this domain of chaos, they did not even know what was going on in this domain. There was no way to guess. However, there are records here. Someone mentioned the ruins of the primeval forest in the center, and some people have set foot there, Yin Nuoxing said as she shook the water droplet crystal in her hand. Her words caught Huey's attention. The primeval forest in the center did not have a special name. Most people like to call that place the primeval forest. There is only one place in the world that had this name. It was mentioned that the person who discovered the ruins in the primeval forest was hard to find. Its existence was not engraved in the conceptual layer of the rules. In the brief introduction about the ruins, the buildings in the forest were called the huts of the night dwellers. The term night dwellers referred to life forms that only existed at night and could not be observed by humans. The time of their discovery was determined to be before them. In the history of the planet that could be traced back to the past, the discoverer of the ruins only saw this scene in the forest trail and saw the 2 great temples, but he did not enter it. He believed that the ruins left behind by the life forms that lived here before them might reveal some secrets about the planet. Unfortunately, even though there were people who came to the ruins later, no one could completely walk out of the forest and into the open space. The exploration of the ancient relics in the primordial forest had lasted for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years of fruitless exploration, almost everyone gave up on the matter at the same time, as if nothing had happened. There was a part missing in the middle. There should be another part missing. Something had happened that caused everyone to give up on the matter and no longer explore it. It's a pity that the answer to the origin of life of our race is right in front of us, but we can't find it. We couldn't help but sigh regretfully when he heard that. Going directly through the forest, the energy of the barrier is still quite strong. It's indeed not a place that can be easily passed through. However, the back door is obviously blocked. For the people here, there's basically no way to walk into the place where history is engraved. Residents of the night. Their history was not passed down. There was a gap in their history. How can there be a gap in their history when they have a higher life form? Feng Qing Wang thought for a while and looked at the Yunua planet. What happened billions of years ago that caused the gap in their history? Yin Nuoxing said, it has to be traced back to recent events. I mean, from billions of years ago to now, and what is still happening now. Hui said, the conquest of the lower plane by the life forms of the upper plane. Yes, there's a very clear record here. It is the record of the world itself. Yin Nuashing flipped through the information in the crystal. Although it is a little vague, we can still take a look. Since it happened recently, the record is quite detailed. Except that it is a little vague. I will pick the result. From the information recorded in the concept layer, the light of the current world was once pierced through by a powerful impact of order. There were intruders, and then a battle broke out between the intruders and the life forms of this world. I will ignore the process in the middle. I will just say the result. In the end, this world escaped in tatters and sank into the deep void. Then, it became what we know now. We crossed his arms. The theory is clear. So, why did the people of the upper plane come to conquer the lower plane? And it is not just this place. There are many other places. Do they have nothing better to do? I'm not sure about that. The information recorded in the concept layer only records the surface of what happened in the world. It doesn't care what the life inside is thinking. We can only judge what they are thinking ourselves. Yin Nuashing put down the water droplet crystal and yawned. What do you think? We asked, itching for a beating. Be serious, we said. Well, I don't know. How would I know what a bunch of orphans of order who are trapped in the domain of the concept body of chaos and still have the time to fight among themselves instead of doing something practical are thinking? Yin Nuashing shrugged and said, in terms of the result, it was a real fight. There was no acting. Of course, this is my one-sided view. Well, it is my one-sided, decisive, and arbitrary speculation. For the time being, I think this way. Let's see how it turns out later. It would be good if my thoughts could be overturned. If not, then let's not overturn it. Hui laughed bitterly, thought about it, and said to Maple, Maple, try searching with the origin energy. See if you can find anything here. My origin energy has been releasing. Can't you feel it? Yin Nuashing glanced at him, making the dim luster on her body shine brighter. In a night sky, she was definitely a bright moon. Oh, okay. The origin energy is not reacting. Do you want to check the annihilation energy? Hui said. Yin Nuashing nodded, and the luster on her body faded. In the blink of an eye, a dull gray color surged over her body. The thick presence of chaos that wrapped around her body made the three of them shudder violently and could not help taking a step back. They had gotten used to the origin energy, but they still could not get used to the annihilation energy. About a minute later, Yin Nuashing withdrew the annihilation energy and shook her head. I can't find any trace of chaos energy. That's weird. We pinched his cheek. Maple, that nose you just touched, that lump of stone you just picked up, it points to the end of the 39th era, right? Yin Nuashing nodded and then frowned. There is no trace of the origin energy. It could be that the concept body of chaos was destroyed, but there's not even a trace of chaos. Hui spread out his hands and said, you see, it's hard to say. Yin Nuashing scratched her head. Perhaps it's just that there is no trace of chaos energy in this world. After all, that lump of stone might not have been formed in this world. It could have floated into the light of this world from the void, or perhaps it was affected by external forces. In this void region, order and chaos would fight every few days, and they might run into each other. No, there's another reason. Hui shook his head. This world can be traced back to 20 years ago. Let's take it as the 37th era, and that lump of stone was formed at the end of the 39th era. After that, this world did not experience any trace of change in the rules. Traces of change in the rules could be washed away, but I understand what you mean. Yin Nuashing slowly nodded his head. At the end of the 39th era, the heavenly gods of origin were all in the upper planes, surrounding the world of origin for the final battle. Furthermore, the world of gods must have been involved as well. After all, the world of gods witnessed the destruction of the void. We snapped his fingers and continued. This world can be traced back to the 37th era. Let's not talk about how it survived the void destruction. The void environment it is now following is the rules of the lower planes. Since there is no trace of change in the rules, we can assume that there are two scenarios. One is that it had changed, but the traces were wiped away, and the other is that it never changed. Yin Nuashing nodded slightly. The first scenario indicates that it may have once been in the upper plane, which is in line with what you said. They were trapped together in the domain of this chaotic concept body and were sent here across the ocean. At this time, they switched to the rules of the lower plane, but there is no way to explain what the cooling crystals are. The second possibility is that it has always been at the distant border of the lower planes. The domain of the chaos concept body was formed at the distant border, and for some reason, the area it encompassed was split apart. The void, which evolved on its own, sandwiched the upper, middle, and lower planes. However, there's no way to explain the cooling crystal because the heavenly god of origin couldn't possibly have come to the edge of the lower planes. He crossed his arms and forced himself to think for a while. This was definitely the most he had ever used his brain in his life. There are two explanations. Well, guesses, or it would be better call them guesses. Let's hear it. The first is that there was a god of origin. It floated here along with the sealed void and was trapped in the chaos concept body's domain. The two of them fought each other desperately and did not stop until they were dead, not even noticing that they had left their original position. As for the second, it's still the same theory. That thing was thrown here, but it sounded a little forced. We laughed dryly. The chaos domain could have been pushed out and ended up here. However, even if a lump of booger wasn't affected by the void, how could it have drifted so far away, from the upper plane to the edge of the lower plane, and even barged into the isolated chaos domain? Even Hui himself felt that it was impossible. As expected, Maple quickly added, the chaos concept body's domain has already cut the void inside and outside. Even things with its own breath might not be able to enter. Not to mention, if it was as you said, the crystal was formed in the external void and was tainted with the breath of an unknown chaos concept body, and just happened to float here and hit the isolated domain of the same creator. That's why even I feel that it's untenable. Hui smiled bitterly and shrugged, but suddenly paused as he continued to ponder. Wait a minute, Maple. I've neglected a condition. That nose. How long does it take for the crystal to form? At the very least, it has to be after the battle and not be affected by the battle on the battlefield. Otherwise, the two small energies could easily be destroyed. As for the time needed, it won't be long. As soon as the void calms down a little, it would immediately start to work. It would immediately get beaten up and form. All that has to be noted is the time it takes for the void to calm down. In other words, it also has to be related to the time it takes for the battle to end. When it ends, how much damage is done to the void, how long it takes for the void to calm down, and then it would begin to recover. If it takes too long, the two small energies would kill themselves, and there would be no such thing. Why do I feel that the probability of forming a crystal is lower than the probability of giving birth to an origin life form? We asked. No. The probability of origin life form is much lower. As long as the conditions are met, you can mass-produce the crystal if you want. But can you summarize the conditions for origin life forms to appear? No. Even after dozens of eras, we still haven't completely figured out the conditions. However, based on the current situation, this crystal is definitely one of a kind. The origin heavenly god is gone, and the chaos concept body is also gone. Discontinued my foot. I don't know if I should applaud or sigh. Back to the original question. So how long does it take? We asked. Not long. As I just said, 2 or 3 hours at most. The upper and lower limits of time are limited. Then it's fine. Pretend I didn't say anything. We sighed deeply. So, you think that there's another origin god aside from the chaos concept body? I don't think that's possible. The origin god escaped at the end of the war or something. Even if Jing Yuan said that the origin gods did not die all at once, they must have been fighting in the upper planes. What does that have to do with the lower planes? Yin Nuoxing's face twitched as she spoke. Think about it. If we were forced to the position of the divine realm, would we still have the mind to go to the distant borders of the lower planes, even if the other side suddenly stopped fighting? Probably not. But what if there's something? For example, we found the origin god in the distant borders. Hui replied. Yin Nuoxing paused and scratched her head. Then you have to be able to escape first. Besides, How would you get information about the distant borders of the lower planes at that time? This was a very serious problem. They were already at their doorstep, so they would definitely be blocked. There was no way they could escape. They weren't moles, so how could they dig a hole in the void and escape? They were already confined to the space of the main world. There were 10,000 ways to completely isolate the entire world of light from the void, no matter which level of the void it was. There was no way they could escape, even if they wanted to. So you listened for a long time and was able to make sense of it, but could not come to a final conclusion. So what's actually going on? At present, we can only... Yin Nuoxing reluctantly opened her mouth and looked at Hui, who muttered, "We can only assume that an origin god had fought here, and most likely died along with the chaos concept body." Hui cleared his throat. "Then let's sort out. At the end of the 39th era, an origin god suddenly came to the distant borders of the lower planes for some reason and fought with the chaos concept body in the domain of chaos. Wait, I suddenly feel that there's another possibility. For example, at the end of the 39th era, an origin god and a chaos concept body were trapped here at the same time, unloaded the entire void, and instantly jumped down to the lower planes with the domain. Finally, after a long time, it evolved into the upper, middle, and lower planes." Hui stroked his chin. "That sounds reasonable. It seems..." Yin Nuoxing frowned. "But there's a premise. The premise is that there are only a handful of world lights from the 36th and 37th eras in the void, and if there are too many, we've been fighting for so long. There shouldn't be too many world light orbs left. If there are too many of them, it means that they're definitely not from the 39th era." Hui nodded and opened a soul communication channel. "This is easy. Everyone, respond when you hear it, and take a look at the world lights around you. When were they formed?" Lord Hui, you've come to us at the right time again." I Ching laughed delightedly. "To be honest, we found it very mysterious when we first found it. Most of the world lights here are actually left behind from the previous era and can be traced back to around the 37th era. We were just about to talk to you about it." "How many do you mean by most?" "About a few thousand. Let's count them." After a while, I Ching finished counting and coughed dryly. "About 10,000. Based on the ratio, perhaps 70% of them are world lights left behind from the previous era. What's amazing is that none of them were left behind from that era. All of them were born in this era, and the earliest ones can only be traced back to a few eras. By the way, what should we do with these world lights?" After a few casual words, we shrugged at Maple. My train of thought was strangled in the cradle. "So you had misheard a bunch of even more wrong guesses." At this moment, her little head was almost smoking. No matter how out of control her mind was, she could not keep up with the serious thinking of the two of them. Once they started talking about things that were more than 10 or 20 years old, she could not help but shout, "I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't want to be the primeval sky god anymore. Why do I have to think about such troublesome things?" Yin Nuoxing quickly held the little girl who was about to go berserk. She smiled bitterly and said, "It's a matter of time. The time span of the void is the most troublesome thing for the whole thing, especially when it comes to the matters of the previous era. If I don't sort out the time and put all the information together, I'll have to find an abyssal death mist and jump into it and bury myself." Moreover, there were more troublesome things that had not been sorted out yet. Why was the law of order the dominant force in this realm of chaos? Why was the power of chaos able to jump out and fight against the power of order when the law of order was the dominant force? Why was it that the power of chaos could still jump out and fight against the power of order? Why was it a phenomenon that could only happen when chaos was the dominant force? Why was there no trace of the primeval sky god, but there were still things related to them left behind? Why was the battle between order and chaos not particularly intense? Why do the members of order have the leisure to abuse their allies in the middle and lower planes? Why was there a world group outside the realm of chaos that should have existed inside, and that world group had even been active in the lower planes for at least a few years? Also, where did the people of that world group go in the end? Did they all return to the realm of chaos? There were too many questions, so many that he and Maple wanted to bury themselves. Chapter 1818. Why Rivers Flow, Why Lives Die, Why the Void is Nonsensical, Why the God of Origins Slacking in Public, Why the Chaos Concept Body's Reclusive, and Why the Divine Realm Observer brought you the mystery of origins, and why the guardians of the divine realm would passionately broadcast for you. When not here for archaeology, Hui slapped away the pile of rubbish in front of him, causing a thunderous commotion throughout the room. He then looked at Maple with a dark expression. What are we here for? Why did it suddenly turn into something as trivial as tracing back to the origin? Yin Noashing slapped away the rubbish that was flying in front of her and looked at him with extreme helplessness. I'm thinking that since this place involves the chaos concept bodies, it's normal for it to be involved in the origin nonsense as well. Moreover, the development of the two biggest problems in the void is more or less the same. Apart from that, what do you want to do? Directly carry this world back? Or directly declare war on the chaos concept bodies that might exist here? What do you think is normal? What is normal? Well, that, Hui replied. In the end, what do you think we're here for? Yin Nuashing spread her hands and continued when she saw Hui sweating profusely. I don't know, right? Do we have an obvious purpose? No. Do we intend to go head-to-head with the chaos concept bodies? No. It's best to run away when we see them. And of course, it's best if we don't see them. Since there's none, isn't there only the matter in front of us? Yin Nuashing lowered her head and sighed at Hui after her gaze wandered around the conceptual layer of rules for a while. Since we've run into them, we can only see what's going on with this world and the void, and look for things related to origins or things related to them. Or should we just go home and pretend that nothing happened? At the mention of the heavenly god of origins, they were most concerned about the 771 paths left behind by the heavenly god of origins. Each path had significant implications and was inconspicuously hidden within the void of order. While there were reminders that they were basically gathered in the upper and middle planes, it did not say that the lower planes were completely unrelated to them. Perhaps there was something hidden in the lower planes, such as this void region. As for why it was a chaos concept body's domain, well, who knows? Perhaps they had guessed wrongly, and this place had nothing to do with Chi-Chi. It was just another matter that was definitely related to the origins, and that matter involved the two things at the apex of the void all those years ago. It would have been fine even if they did not get involved. What should have happened could have happened as usual, and the world could have lasted in units of epochs without much change. But now that they were aware of it, there was no way they could ignore it. If the chaos concept body was placed in the far reaches of the lower planes, who knows if it would jump out one day and knock the void of order down, only to be stabbed in the back by the underworld, and everything would be over. Even after sifting through layers upon layers of things hidden in the room, they did not find any valuable information. Still, it did not really tell them anything in the first place, and most of it was their own guesses. With insufficient information and relying on their imagination to explore the path ahead, they had probably found most of the valuable things in the lower planes and did not expect to find out everything by simply setting foot in a lower plane. They might have to go to the upper and middle planes to truly understand what was going on in this void region. Should be nothing. Hui threw the things in front of him, and the pile of trash promptly clanged. Should we look elsewhere? He asked Maple, clapping his hands. Maybe there is something hidden in other planes. Yin Nuashing shook her head gently. I have already explored the concept plane of this place. The space projected in the real world, which is the space inside this building, has been exposed to my eyes. We are right where the information is stored in the concept plane. The top level is closer to the deeper level, and there's nothing worth seeing there. Siyu shook her head as she walked past him listlessly. But when she heard that, she suddenly perked up and quickly grabbed his shoulder. Are we leaving? Are we leaving? Let's get out of here quickly. The girl's anxious expression gave him fright. What's wrong? Weren't you fine just now? Why are you making such a ruckus here? Siyu's pretty face twitched, and her face turned pale. Making up lessons is so painful. Making up lessons is so painful. I don't want to explore history. Just looking at this, my head hurts. Let's go, little star. Yin Nuashing suddenly understood. She reached out and pressed Siyu's head. She tilted her head and said to Hui, "Do you two want to test if the rules of bloodline, soul, and self-structure have some similarities?" Hui was building a portal and preparing to leave through the main door. He was dumbfounded when he heard this. What? Both of them don't like to use their brains. This brat's overuse of her brain is simply in the same painful position as you. Hui and Siyu were speechless. Hui Jun's face turned red as he glared at him. "Do you think I don't like to use my brain? That's a tactical rest. A god who is a shield must have the awareness of being a shield. No matter what it is, you just have to bear it. But I didn't say that you have to deal with it. Hitting people and dealing with things are not what a shield should do." Yin Nuashing said, "That's very shield. Then what did you say when you used your brain and said a bunch of analysis just now?" "My hands are tired. I don't want to be a shield anymore. I don't use my brain when I pick it up now." Okay, that was very shield. He didn't think that Hui could be so anxious to explain it. Between the brain and the shield, he had to choose one. As for Siyu, well, this brat's pretty face was red as she pretended to look at him fiercely. She was so anxious that she couldn't speak. Apart from being cute, she didn't have any lethality. Ignoring the anxious expressions of the two, Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and took over the portal that Hui hadn't finished building. She pulled it open. A few seconds later, a spiral hole appeared in the space in front of them. The four of them slowly walked into the door and disappeared from the building that was the entrance to the concept layer of rules. The predetermined location of the portal was in the girl's house. As soon as they opened their eyes, they saw the hut built by the yellow soil. Once again, they felt a sense of disconnection that made them scratch their heads awkwardly. We were still in the normal world just now. Feng Qing Wang sat down on the chair behind her and looked at the slightly brightening sky outside the window. We suddenly returned to the place where the development of civilization had regressed for tens of thousands of years. The two were clearly in the same place. The chaos in the world of order is very normal. Hui leaned back on the wall and swung on his legs. The mess caused by intelligent life is never pure. Therefore, the chaos in the world of order is relatively exciting. The word exciting here is not a compliment. Unlike the mess between chaos and order, when the chaos came, order would be gone. How could there be such a disaster scene that is obviously controlled by humans? The void frontline was also fragmented before. I didn't see the development level regressing at that time. At most, it was broken everywhere and in urgent need of repair. It could be fixed with a little effort. Hui grinned and looked at the slightly brightening sky. What's the next step? Siyu yawned and rubbed her head. She raised her hand to get the attention of the three people in the room. Anyway, let's sleep first. Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked at the sky. Wake up, it's morning. Ugh. Siyu pouted and looked at him sadly. Yin Nuashing patted the girl's head and said, "If you want to sleep, come back to the spiritual world." Siyu's body trembled visibly. Her sleepy little face suddenly became very alert. This girl was afraid of growing hair in the spiritual world. Although she admitted that it was actually very comfortable to stay in the spiritual world, she did not want to stay in there for no reason. Once she went in, she did not know when she would come out again. The four in the room had a simple discussion. The two girls took a nap on the spot. Yin Nuashing and Hui continued to talk about this broken place. Occasionally, the little angel would join in and say a few words. The three of them went back and forth to guess what was going on in the void. Until the sky was completely bright, they still did not have a clear answer. In fact, the more they thought about it, the more vague it became. It took a whole 2 hours from when the sky was just shining to when the sky was completely bright. At the moment when the time was up, they could clearly feel that the entire small town, no, the whole village had woken up at the same time. It was completely unified and there was no difference at all. Sure enough, it's still this kind of weird situation. Such a strange scene pulled the attention of Yin Nuashing and the others. He scanned the small town and village, and then looked at the other places on the planet. Wherever the sky was bright at the same time, It meant that the whole town was completely bright. Someone would wake up, and when they woke up, it meant that the whole town and village would wake up from their dreams together. It cannot be more uniform. Strange synchronization, but it only happens when they are sleeping and when they are awake. Huey's gaze looked at many places and saw some differences. The state of synchronization is not always maintained. At other times, they will do what they are supposed to do. There is no completely unified phenomenon, but when night falls, they will fall asleep together. When they wake up, they will wake up together. I was wondering why the girl asked us to prepare our own beds. Isn't it about the same if a high-level life form does not sleep for a night? So this is the reason. Could it be related to the inner world? The little angel said, "Should we stay in there for a night and take a look?" Yin Nuashing shook her head. No, it shouldn't be. There is no connection in the structure of the laws between the two worlds. If there is really a connection between the two worlds, there will be very obvious traces of the structure of the laws left behind. It cannot be cut off and can only be hidden. Although this place is related to the two big problems, these worlds are obviously not created by them. The highest level of these life forms is only at the level of celestial. There is no primordial energy or primordial law. They can't hide anything from us. So, it is just the situation of the outer world. The outer world itself is independent and not affected. She fiddled with her wings unconsciously when she was thinking. The range is big enough and unified enough. So, could be the influence of the laws of this world. For example, what must be done at a certain time. This is already an unshakable law. Yin Nuashing frowned. It's possible. We're outsiders, and we used a huge amount of energy to hide our existence. The rules of this world might not be able to recognize us, so they won't affect us. If it's really related to the rules engraved in the concept level of the rules, we won't be able to feel it. It's like air everywhere. It won't make people care about it all the time. As for the reason, could it be related to the rampage of the chaos? Afraid that someone would sneak out and provoke a nest of chaos soldiers? Sure enough, everything was strange, whether it was the inner world or the outer world. A faint commotion suddenly appeared at this time. At first, it was just some small exclamations. The people outside seemed to have found something and had a bigger reaction. However, it did not feel panic, but more of doubt. After a while, the noise gradually grew louder. The girl upstairs slowly walked out the door. Yin Nuashing and Hui looked at each other and woke up the two little girls who were in a daze. They walked out of the house together. When the girl saw them coming out, she tilted her head and nodded at them. And she was more friendly. At this moment, the open space of the small town village was filled with people. People from every household came out of their houses, big and small. Some held the door with their hands, some held the fence, and looked at the sky. There were also people from other places gathering here one after another. There was no specific gathering place. They subconsciously gathered together, probably thinking that it would be safer with more people. They looked up at the sky in unison. The faint whispers revealed their confusion. Compared to the beginning, they were a little uneasy now. Yin Nuashing and the others also looked up. In the sky, where there should be a big light blue fireball hanging in the sky, it was now occupied by a gloomy light spot. It was like a cloud that shrouded the sky. When it appeared from the horizon and slowly moved across, the whole space was filled with a low and strange whisper. The four of them could not understand what the voice was saying at all. The whispers and faint, uneasy voices from all directions did not stop at all. It seemed that no one had noticed this voice. The people around were just discussing what was going on with the gloomy light spot that should not have appeared. The time is too short. At this moment, the girl suddenly opened her mouth, as if she was whispering to herself. Yin Nuashing and the others turned their eyes, and they all said, "Oh," in their hearts. Ordinary people don't know what's going on, but these higher beings might know. Now that she made such a sound as if she understood something, she obviously knew what was going on. He rolled his eyes. He had to find a way to trick her. It's too short. It feels like a long time has passed in a daze. I don't know if it's because I've been wandering outside for too long. I've forgotten when was the last time. The girl turned around abruptly and looked at them with eyes full of resentment and dissatisfaction. She said mockingly, "You did not even participate in the war in the Chaos Era? Have you forgotten the Chaos Era that broke out 7 billion years ago? People from the upper plane? Ha! Although we had succeeded in getting the girl to tell them the truth, the girl's favorability towards them, which was already close to zero, was probably going to fall into the negative range. After the words came out, the girl did not even look at them. The others in front of them were still discussing the sudden appearance of the gray light spots. She was probably thinking about what she wanted to do. Meanwhile, the four of them were silently talking about the chaos period, which sounded very familiar to them in their souls. Yin Nuashing scratched his head. "Girl, we're in that continent. That is, a place 5 years ago. There was a similar period. It was that the little angel listened and thought for a moment. She glanced at his memory of more than 5 eras and said, Spirit Gathering Continent. During the chaos period, the former distorted race, led by Long Sky, created this thing in their experimental world in the Spirit Gathering Continent. At that time, we fought together for 100 days. Yes, it's this. Oh, Yinuashing said. As long as the key was found, this little box of memories would surge out like a flood. He immediately recalled the time when he fought against the Chaos Spawn on the Spirit Gathering Continent. Later, he even abducted an intelligent Chaos Spawn back to the realm of the gods. He did not know what it was doing in the realm of the gods now. The Chaos Period. Hui rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard them talk about this before. The 100 days when Qing Jun was beaten into isolation. You summed it up well. Hui smiled bitterly. He remembered all too clearly. When the group met up, Qing Jun looked like a frosted eggplant. He would never have thought that this iron-headed man, the real man of the real men and the person in charge of the ancient imperial world, would almost cry out loud after fighting for a mere 100 days. We had a deep impression of him. But to mention this now, Feng, do you think that the Chaos Period and the Chaos Period are related? At first glance, the names seem to differ by one word. But I don't think so. These two void regions are separated from the outside. Yin Nuashing glanced at him and said faintly, I thought about it from another perspective. You still remember the Chaos Spawn, right? The thing created by the distorted race. That is a watered-down version of the abyssal death mist spawn, remember? We nodded vigorously. Yes. And the abyssal death mist spawn is a crude version of the Chaos Soldiers, Chaos Constructs, Chaos Spawn, and so on. Hui was stunned. F*CK. Don't tell me that if we count the layers, the Chaos Period is actually about 10, 2, or 3 Chaos Periods. Everyone knew what the gray light spot was. The thing was definitely related to the Chaos concept bodies. In the void, other than them, no one else could release such an exquisite and standard gray cloud. It seemed to be able to devour the order of the entire void until the order of the void was crushed into dust. They had not encountered this thing many times, certainly not as often as the abyssal death mist. But they could still recognize it at a glance because it was too obvious. That aura stood there, as if it wanted everyone in the void to turn their attention to it. Wherever it went, there was a trail of black smoke that fluttered in the wind. This was the style of the chaos energy that they were familiar with. That's an image that was forcefully projected into the reality realm. As long as you're in the void territory, you'll be able to see this ball of chaotic energy no matter where you are. Therefore, I'm afraid that everyone in the void territory will be able to see this image. Yin Nuashing looked at him and said, I'm just saying. Hui coughed softly and muttered to the girl in front of him, Is this also a new round of the void chaos? What else can it be? The girl was too lazy to look at them. Her voice was cold. The time of the outbreak of the chaos period is not fixed. They have the final say in what they want to do. Not to mention that it has only been 70 billion years. Order has not been restored in most places, especially the lower planes. When she said the lower planes, she could not help but raise her voice. When they appear, the void will never be peaceful. If you don't want to surrender to the chaos and die in vain, you can only fight with all your might. Fight! Yin Nuashing and the other three nodded vigorously. Agreed, completely agreed. This was their specialty. They had been fighting for 5 eras, and they would continue to fight in the future. No matter where they were in the void of order, if they saw the power of chaos, they would fight without caring about anything else. All the archaeology and solving mysteries were thrown aside first. Therefore, the four of them rolled up their sleeves. Their aura was so strong that they looked like they were ready to fight. The girl was shocked. She quickly jumped forward and looked back at them in horror. Anyway, we're definitely going to fight. Tell me, how are we going to fight? Where are we going to fight? Are we going to wait for them to attack us? Or are we going to kill them? We rubbed his hands together. They had not burst out their strongest aura yet. That would take the life of this planet. It was just the movement of the energy surging and exploding in their bodies. The girl looked at them with a puzzled face and frowned. Are you going to fight in the lower planes? Yes. We pursed his lips. Is there a problem? With the power of chaos before us, no matter where it is, we will just fight. It was a matter-of-fact answer. It was an answer that was in line with their style. However, the girl did not understand at all. She looked at them with an extremely strange expression. She seemed to have understood something. Suddenly, she said in a deep voice, "The lower planes do not have enough conditions and resources for you people from the upper planes. Even if you want to force your way in and get it from us, resources? Conditions? What conditions do you want?" Hui frowned and waved his hand impatiently. Why is it so troublesome? Okay, if you want to fight or not, we will go by ourselves. Seeing that they were really going to move immediately, which was completely contrary to the few situations that she knew, she was in a daze again. She subconsciously said, "Wait a minute." She paused and took a deep breath. She put on a calm face and put on a straightforward expression. If we rush out now, the power that is evenly distributed to all worlds will be blocked at the door. That will attract all the power of chaos. Not only that, even the power that is distributed to other void regions will gather here and attack us. We don't have that much power to deal with it. It is already very difficult to deal with the power that is distributed to us. If we attract more firepower, we will only be digging our own graves. Seeing that they wanted to say something, the girl waved her hand. I don't know what is wrong with you people. You lack common sense, and you are acting recklessly. It is your own business if you are reckless. However, if you die, the power of chaos that has been transferred here will not retreat. They will simply gather. This is a lesson learned from the lives of our predecessors. Furthermore, the people from other worlds and the upper and middle planes will not come to help. We, all of us, are isolated and helpless in the void. Hui slapped his hand on his head. Oh my God, I was a little carried away when I saw the power of chaos gathering. I forgot that the order beings in the void region are in a state of internal strife. But to this extent, it is a little too, no, it is not strange. In fact, it is not strange at all. Thinking about it carefully, if they did not force most of the order beings to submit to them and directly lead the war between order and chaos in the void region, perhaps it would develop into this situation. Everyone in the void would fight for themselves and not help each other. They would only panic when the people of the underworld pointed their swords, spears, and halberds at their door. The only difference was that according to the girl, the power of chaos here was distributed to deal with all the order life forms, while in the underworld, it was a vast and endless torrent that only intended to destroy all the order life forms within the encirclement in one go. If he could think of this, Maple must have thought of it too. Maple, I suddenly feel a little lucky. Lucky that we intervened fast enough. If we had chosen to watch from the realm of the gods back then, perhaps, yes. Yin Nuashing slowly raised her head and looked at the dark void. Perhaps the current situation will become the situation that we have to face. Chapter 1819. If they hadn't done that back then, the future they were in right now might have changed. Almost everyone had this thought before, whether it was a small matter or a big matter. They might not necessarily say it with regret or regret. Sometimes, it might just be an unintentional thought. They try to think about how the current situation would have developed if they hadn't done that back then. Would it have really become better, or would it have actually become worse? It It was a rather interesting thought, but it would never be realized. It had already become an established fact of the past, and there was no way to change it. Thoughts would always remain thoughts. The sudden change to the weather phenomenon of the Chaos era was only a signal for war to begin. Just like what Yin Nuashing and the others had experienced before, ordinary people didn't understand this weather phenomenon very well, but the high-level life forms who knew what it meant all became serious in an instant. Battle intent and power surged in their bodies, becoming warriors of order who were about to step onto the battlefield. Gu Jiaheng and the others who had just returned to their little nest to rest, and probably hadn't rested for long, appeared in space once again, ready to charge and break through the enemy lines. The high-level life forms on this planet all left the ground and gathered in space when they saw the army in space. The forces stationed on the other planets also got into position. The combat strength of this star system was actually quite good. Although there were no reciprocity cultivators, the enemies didn't seem to be particularly strong. Usually, the soldiers of chaos would only come out to harass them from time to show their presence. Only now would they gather their army. The hidden forces all huddled up in a ball of stone to show that they were harmless. As long as the latter didn't move, there wouldn't be much of a problem. On the side of order, although the original world group had been destroyed, there were still a number of world orbs hanging here. There must be many people hiding in there, waiting to deal with this godforsaken period. The total number of celestial gods gathered in the world orbs around here is only about 3 times more than here. Yin Nuashing looked at Hui and said calmly. Hui said, there should be a few hundred world orbs around here, right? How come there's only about 10,000 of them? Didn't she just say that most of the places in the world of order have yet to recover, especially in the lower realms? Plus, those idiots from the upper realms who have nothing better to do are constantly causing trouble in the lower realms. How much power can they gather? To have 10,000 heavenly deities is already not bad. Yin Nuashing said calmly. This was the remaining power of a world group, and it could no longer be compared to its peak. If they were to work together, they could hold on for quite some time under the attack of the Chaos soldiers. If they were to fight on their own, well, it would not be much better. However, that shouldn't be the case. The lower planes were already in such dire straits. Anyone with a bit of foresight who had suffered at the hands of the power of chaos would know to work together. As long as they were careful not to attract the hatred of all the power of chaos in the void, everything would be fine. It was a very simple matter, it was very simple for him. He just didn't know if it would be simple for these heavenly gods. Hui muttered to himself for a moment, intending to divert his attention. Just as he was about to follow them to see what they were up to, I Ching's voice suddenly rang out in his soul transmission. Lord Hui, yes, I don't know what's going on. If you want to say that there are some unknown things that have emerged from the void that are related to the power of chaos, we've already seen it. Not that. We've already seen the chaos gaps. They appear in all directions of the void at different sizes, and the concentration of chaos energy coming out is also different. According to the locals, the chaos soldiers are rushing out from these gaps. The power of chaos that will emerge from these gaps is also determined by the amount of energy in each gap. It's going to be the time of the entire void war soon. What I want to report is I Ching turned to look at the void in front of them and fell silent for a moment. Although it was also pitch black and there were no unusual changes in the power of the void, there should be something here, but it was gone. The upper planes are gone. The 4 of them were stunned. Gone. We asked, what do you mean gone? Did it disappear in concept? Or is it hiding in the void? Or has it sunk into a certain level of the void? Yin Nuashing listed a few possibilities. I Ching deliberated for a moment before he said with uncertainty, I can't say for sure. The conceptual position I'm in now is at the border of the upper and middle planes. If I go forward, I should go to the upper planes, but there's nothing here. Hui was confused. He covered his face with one hand and spread the other to show that he did not care about this matter. To be more specific, there's nothing here. There's no world light? Or was there nothing conceptually? Are you sure you've really crossed over to the upper planes now? Or do you think you've already gone to the upper planes? Yin Nuashing continued to ask. The disappearance of an entire plane was actually quite complicated in itself, and it had to happen in such a place where everything was wrong and complicated. It was very complicated. I'm still at the border. No matter how I try to cross over to the upper plains, even if I move my position is still at the border, I Ching said in distress. I've been struggling here for a few hours. Completely stopped in place and unable to move forward. That means that the border has been extended indefinitely, or the concept of the upper plains has been partially erased. So there's still a border, but the upper plains seem to be wrapped in a layer of barrier, a layer of order-level barrier, so it can't be touched no matter what. Yin Nuashing's eyes flashed, and she frowned. No matter what the situation is, it's very troublesome. Without using a large-scale void probe, there's no way to understand what's going on. How about this? Try to go forward again and leave a few energy towers as nodes and beacons. Try to cover the position of the upper plains as much as possible. Then, we'll see what's going on. I'm going now. Hui stared at I Ching's disappearing silhouette in the soul transmission. He thought about it and felt very strange. Phone, the upper plains are gone. Let's not talk about whether the upper plains have been wiped out or if the upper plains have been hidden. In the entire concept of gone or hidden, then what's up with the upper plains that the people of the lower plains hate? Yin Nuashing's thoughts were interrupted at once. She stared blankly for a moment before saying, resentment left behind from a long time ago? Or the upper plains just disappeared not long ago? It's all possible. We thought about it and said, seems like it. Well, I'll ask just to be safe. The girl's expression was very serious as she stared at the sky. Just as she was about to meet up with Gu Jiaheng and the others in the stars, Hui quickly stopped her. Hey, wait a minute. Don't rush. I have something to ask you. When was the last time you saw people from the upper plains? The girl looked at him strangely. She was not sure why he would ask such a question, but it was not something that she could not answer. So she opened her mouth. Her face was a little impatient as she spoke. Nothing good ever happens when people from the upper realm come here. So I still remember that about 3 years ago in the Void Era, they came here once. I saw it with my own eyes. But if I include what I heard, there were people from the upper realm who came to the lower realm about half a year ago. Looking for your companions? No, just asking. The girl made a vague sound, glanced at them, and shot up into the sky without saying a word. Hui scratched his head and looked at Feng. The latter also looked back at him. Don't rush. I Ching has already set up 7 energy towers. 3 more, and I can lock on to the situation of the unknown region in the void. I'm not too anxious about this. Huey's gaze fell from the starry sky and the void. He stared at the crowd that had been evacuated. They seemed to have heard the words of a prestigious person. They no longer paid attention to the unknown astronomical phenomenon in the sky and dispersed to do their own things. Oh, there's also someone who was secretly watching them. It was probably the girl or Gu Jiaheng's men. Based on their impression of the people from the upper plane, it was impossible for them to leave them behind. However, they didn't intend to do anything troublesome, so they didn't care about the people who were watching them. 10 energy towers have been prepared. They can be used for the time being. 2 minutes later, Yin Nuashing opened his eyes. The colorful origin energy surged into his eyes. His attention, sight, and consciousness spread out to the energy towers. He looked at the void in front of him. The results of the observation may be slightly off, but it should not be too serious. The parts that are off can be checked again when the rest of the energy towers are in place. Now, let's take a look at the general situation. Yin Nuashing did not even finish muttering to himself before he interrupted himself. He was stunned for a long time and narrowed his eyes. Hui felt that the origin energy he mobilized had increased. Even the light of the initial light was surging slightly on the surface of his body. An invisible pressure was quietly pouring into the void through the space of the real world. It did not affect the fragile little planet. About 5 minutes later, Yin Nuashing retracted all of his energy, leaving a part of his energy consciousness in the incomplete energy network built by the energy towers. He then withdrew from the long-distance observation. How is it? Why is there no movement after Hui scratched his head in puzzlement. His face was anxious. Hmm. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. He was so confused that he pulled his long hair. After a long time, he said, "It seems like it's hidden." Before we could finish listening to him, he continued, "It also seems like the whole thing has been eliminated conceptually. Or it could be stop. Hui waved his hand with a face full of sweat. Just tell me what you think is the most likely result. If you want to talk about this and that, you won't stop for a whole day. I'm more inclined to think that the entire upper plane is hidden." Yin Nuoxing frowned in confusion. "There's a layer of order barrier in the void that's not easy to recognize. It's just right in the middle and upper planes, cutting off the connection between the two planes. That's what I think, but there's no way to explore that layer of order barrier that's not easy to recognize. According to the traces of the flow of the void, they're actively avoiding a region in front of them and a concept. It's a void that looks like a huge sphere from the outline of its edge. The existence of the sphere obstructs the flow of the void, but things like the sea of time are not affected." Yin Nuoxing fiddled with his long hair. A moment later, he spread his hands like a hoodlum. "TSK, what do you mean by not easy to recognize? The unidentifiable thing in this broken place can only be something related to the concept of chaos. What else could it be? Anyway, it can't be left behind by the origin energy. Their movements are inclined to dismantle that unidentifiable thing." We clapped his hands and said without thinking, "Then dismantle it. Dismantle it when it's unidentifiable. What if the entire upper plane behind it is erased from the concept of rules? What are you going to do? Then pretend I didn't say anything." Hui turned his attention and glanced at the warriors of order who were still preparing in the starry sky. He was suddenly startled. "I almost forgot about the important thing. Can you see the time? The time left behind by that unidentifiable layer of order barrier." Yin Nuoxing was silent for a longer time this time. She did not use the origin energy to continue probing. She lowered her head and pondered. It looked more like she was hesitating, thinking, and doubting whether the information she had was true or false. 5 Iris. Hui was stunned. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and continued to speak. Her words were shocking. "It's exactly the same time as the abyssal death mist retreating." The group was shocked. The 3 beside him and the 2 girls in his soul were stunned. This news was simply, Hui jumped when he heard it. "No, how could this place be? That's just a coincidence, right? It's just a coincidence. You didn't sense the presence of the abyssal death mist from the barrier, right? And you just said that there was an error, right? Right? Then there must be a mistake." "Ha! Ha! Yes, there was no presence of the abyssal death mist." Yin Nuoxing narrowed her eyes and shook her head with a sneer. "But the time when the abyssal death mist appeared, how could I forget? As for the error you mentioned, in a place with such a large span in the void, a moment of 10 years or 100 years could be considered as the same time period. If the time period was not calculated in units of 10,000 years, it would not be considered a distance in time. So, there's almost no error. If it's a coincidence, there's no trace of it at such a long distance. Let's just treat it as a coincidence. After all, we haven't found anything yet. We can only treat it as a coincidence until we find something to break the conjecture." Everyone was silent. Huey's expression froze at that moment of awkward laughter. He did not move for a long time. When his face twitched, it was already 3 minutes later. "All right, the 51st era. All right, there's time. Then what's the matter with the people from the upper realm that they were talking about? She just said that half a year ago, she heard that the people from the upper plane had come to the lower plane. 3 years ago, they visited the land under our feet. What's going on? Either the inside is isolated from the outside. The inside can enter and leave, but outsiders can't explore or enter." Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and pinched her arms with both hands. "But that layer of order barrier is obviously related to chaos. There should be no way for the beings of order from the upper plane to come and go as they please. Let's not dwell on the question of entering and leaving first. What's the other or? The other," Yin Nuoxing's face was a little twisted, "is that the people from the upper plane are fake. If they have nothing to do with the people from the middle plane, then they only exist in fantasy. I can only explain it this way, but it's too far-fetched. It's even more ridiculous than a joke in the void. Huey's face stiffened. The number of strange things has increased. Forget it. What's the use of worrying about such trivial things here? Yin Nuashing shook her head and heaved a sigh of relief. She sent a telepathic message to the people who were secretly monitoring them. We're going up to help fight. If you want to pass the message, just say it like this. Don't worry, we won't disturb you. The four of them left the small planet and directly appeared in the void. They were still a long distance away from the hole that the people in this void area called the Chaos Gap. Looking at the hole in the void was more direct. It was much bigger than looking at it in the real world. Looking at the size of the hole with the naked eye, it was probably a huge gap with a diameter measured in light years. According to the message sent by I Ching and the others, the size of the Chaos Gap was considered small. The average diameter of the gaps in the middle plane was more than 100 times that of the one in front of them. The chaos energy in the Chaos Gap was already surging. They could feel the chaos energy from a long distance away. It was many times denser than the non-orderly energy of the abyssal death mist. Siyu and Feng Qing Wang, who had adapted to the abyssal death mist, frowned slightly when they saw it. Obviously, they were not used to the chaos energy. They didn't have many direct contact with it. In the past, when they saw it, they were separated by a layer of the spiritual world. Now that they were experiencing it in person, it was a new experience. However, since they had adapted to the abyssal death mist, they wouldn't vomit in disgust when facing the pure chaos. Hui was tidying up his shield and sword. He turned his head and saw Feng's calm expression. Well, generally speaking, when he put on such an indifferent expression, it meant that he was going to destroy the thing in front of him and the void in the next second. Feng, are you going to use Peerless? We'll see. This kind of unnecessary battle. I don't know what to say. Yin Nuashing sighed with a complicated expression and shook her head. Hui turned his head and looked at the gap in front of him. There's nothing you don't know. If you want to solve this disaster for the order beings in the void, we'll gather our forces and charge at them. Anyway, didn't everyone bring a lot of things here? If we put them all in the void, we won't have to worry about blowing up the Chaos Realm. Just as they were thinking about whether they should blow up the Chaos Realm, Gu Jiaheng hurried to their side. Naturally, they couldn't hide the news that they were planning to join the battle from him. This little commander who didn't have a good first impression of them, but didn't show any hostility towards them, was quite brave. In the eyes of the people in the lower planes, people from the upper planes were like wild beasts and thugs who committed all kinds of crimes. He actually had the guts to come to them alone. If he wasn't trying to show some kind of sincerity, he was planning to die with them. Why are you here? Aren't you going to guard your own world? Hui waved his hand to let the little commander who hurried over to take a breather. He waved his hand and said, just stay behind and guard. We'll do our best to deal with it here. If we can't deal with it, you can intercept it yourself. Phew! When I heard their response, I thought they were joking. Gu Jiaheng straightened his back and looked puzzled and shocked. If you guys block the gap in front of the Chaos Realm, we know, we'll be ganged up on or something. But we don't plan to go to that extent. Hui spread out his hands and added in his heart, but it's hard to say whether it will reach that stage later. It depends on what Maple thinks. If he's cranky and gets carried away, the next second will be the scene of everyone lining up millions of energy towers in the void and bombarding the soldiers of chaos head-on. The little commander's liver trembled as he listened. Why? Why do you people from the upper planes participate in the war of the lower planes? This is a barren and backward place. We don't want anything. Hui waved his hand, and his fighting spirit soared to the sky. We're standing here for only one purpose, to beat these bastards back to their mother's womb. Gu Jiaheng's eyes were full of confusion. He looked at them in puzzlement. Why? I don't understand. Hui sighed. He crossed his arms and turned to look at him. You guys are really scared by the so-called people from the upper planes. Although we're also from the upper planes, do you think all the people from the upper planes are like what you think? Gu Jiaheng hesitated. He stared at his black eyes for a while and slowly nodded. Huey's face darkened at once. Have you ever been to the upper planes? Yin Nuashing asked. Gu Jiaheng shook his head slightly. I don't have time. It's too far to go from the lower planes to the upper planes. Then how can you be sure that you know all the people from the upper planes? This. Gu Jiaheng was stunned. And how can you be sure that the people from the upper planes, you know, are the people from the upper planes? It's obvious that your rules. Our situation is what you think it is. But what I'm saying is that the people from the upper planes you see have broken up your world. As for what exactly they did to you, it might be something very overboard. There might be something even worse. I don't know much about it, so I can't judge. I can't change it, and I have no intention of changing your opinion. Yin Nuoxing stared into his eyes. I just don't like to be lumped together. I won't say that there are good people and bad people everywhere. That's nonsense. The upper planes have been sealed. They've been sealed inside and outside by the powerful power of chaos. Did you know that 5 years ago? Gu Jiaheng was stunned. He widened his eyes in disbelief. How is that possible? What if it's the truth? After Yin Nuoxing said this, she turned around and looked at the surging gap of chaos. She said calmly, I'm just stating the truth. You don't have to believe me. Regional prejudice was really not that easy to get rid of. Moreover, the existence of that damned region was still a question mark. He didn't want to take the blame for some strange things for no reason. Although it wasn't like he hadn't been bombed by the region before. But this time, he was especially angry, causing internal strife during the war between order and chaos. If he found that damn group of people from the upper planes, he wouldn't be surnamed Yin if he didn't drag them out and beat them up. Chapter 1820. Spectre. It was not a ghost in the sense of a noun. The ghost here was an adjective that referred to something that seemed to exist but did not exist. It did not seem to exist but could act in various ways. It could be a person or not. Ah, that's right. He was talking about that accursed upper plane. Maple's words were generally fine. If he said 5 eras, he meant 5 eras. If he had any objections, he could talk to the origin energy, which might give him a slap, which was why he did not ask for a snub. The upper plane that had been flattened after 5 eras was assumed to be sealed internally and externally. I Ching had tried various methods, but could not enter, just as Maple had tried from the distant void as well. Therefore, he felt that for now could be replaced by for now. That place could only be entered or exited through special means, or had to be personally chiseled through the wall. There was clearly no being of a higher level than them in that void zone. There were no primeval ripples, except for the chaos concept body whose existence was unknown. In summary, the upper planes and all the people from the upper planes should have disappeared without a trace. After some time, they would be discovered by the people who went to the middle planes first, and the lower planes would only know about it after some time, instead of the strange situation where the people from the upper planes turned the middle planes upside down. Why did he find it weird? Had he considered the possibility that some of the upper plane people would stay in the middle and lower planes and destroy those two planes? That was certainly the case. If the number of worlds destroyed was not many, he might have mentioned it to Maple. However, according to I Ching and the others, there was not a single place in the middle and lower planes that was in good condition. It was all fallen, broken, and falling apart, with the world group being torn apart into sporadic world luminous orbs. There were more places that were left with the endless noise of destruction, with even the void echoing with the sound of shattering. It was the sound of judgment that the middle and lower planes were riddled with holes. From that point of view, it was something that the upper plane prodigal forces who stayed in the middle and lower planes could not do. As mentioned before, when the highest combat power of the middle plane united, they could also achieve something by fighting the upper plane. If it was really just a part of the upper plane, people who were wandering outside, declaring war on the two planes and causing trouble everywhere, it could only be said that they were too confident and arrogant. In a normal script, they would be overturned by the allied forces of the middle and lower planes after a few years of flaunting their power. But since the truth did not develop in the direction of the normal script, there must be something deeper that had not been revealed. There was probably not a good opportunity to reveal it now, but there would be one sooner or later. Judging from the fact that the middle and lower planes had such a deep grudge against the concept of upper plane people that they had to take the blame for it, if they did not get rid of this group of upper plane people who pretended to be mysterious, they would not be worthy of being called the heavenly god of the beginning. Oh, Maple is the origin. Stop, I can't mention this. If I mention it, something big will happen. Too many things were involved in the above conversation. They could only focus on themselves and what they could do. They had to do their best to survive. Gu Jiaheng and the others didn't have time to pay attention to other things. It wasn't easy for them to tell the others about these big issues and make them understand. Before the fatal threat to the middle and lower planes, the power of chaos, a certain person from the upper plane disappeared, they wouldn't be able to deal with more things. When a person could not even be sure if they could survive and repeatedly jumped in front of the gate of the reincarnation road every day, asking them to try to solve the mystery and understand what happened, and how to solve it. Forget it, that was just nonsense. Therefore, Gu Jiaheng had actually calmed down in a few seconds. After listening to Maple's explosive speech, he quickly regained his composure and then looked at them with a complicated gaze. He threw aside the parts that had nothing to do with the war for the time being. Go back and guard the rear. We looked at the little commander who stared at them silently, but did not know what to say. Your realm of order is not considered strong. Later, when you get involved in our battle, you'll be torn to pieces. No matter whether you believe it or not, and no matter what you think of the entire upper plane, we are destined to intervene in this war. Moreover, we are only representing ourselves. It has nothing to do with the upper plane that you speak of. This is just what we should do as warriors of order. Gu Jiaheng's heart was quite complicated, so complicated that he was completely speechless. The experience that he had accumulated from all the things related to the upper plane in the past years told him that all the words of the upper plane were bullsh*t. Believing a single word of theirs was equivalent to handing over one's life. The friendliness at this time was just a bigger scheme. However, the intuition in his heart told him that these 4 people seemed to be different from all the upper plane that he knew. They did not break in and search everywhere. They did not destroy the concept layer of the rules. They did not care about what their world looked like. They did not care about the simple and crude environment of the lower plane. From the moment they appeared until now, they had not done anything special. They were just watching, as if they were just like a group of bystanders wandering on the edge of the mortal world. The only thing that was worthy of their attention was things related to chaos. Just like what they said, they were warriors of order and only came to exterminate chaos. Sir, it's almost time. If you continue to stay near the gap, the power of chaos will skip the gradual phase and pour out. Please come back as soon as possible. The voice that echoed in his soul made his facial expression more complicated. We noticed a change on his face and waved his hand. You're worried. Go back. We're here. Even if you start a war with the power of chaos in the entire void region in one go, it won't be a problem. That's suicide. I don't think there's any other possibility. Gu Jiaheng shook his head. Are you really not leaving? Forgive me for being blunt. Even if you just stand in front of the door, the power of chaos will increase. Moreover, this gap is not exclusive to this region of ours. There's no way to create a chaos gap of such scale with just our power here. Let's go back together. You could talk about it later. There's no need to be in such a hurry. Hui waved his hand and ignored his voice. Then he said to Maple right in front of him, Maple, if we go all out now, will it affect the plan in the future? It's fine if we don't use the power that the rear has accumulated. However, we still don't know how much power of chaos there is in the void region. There's no guarantee that we won't use it. Yin Nuoxing's eyes looked down at the entire void region once again. Judging from the power of chaos that's being released now, it's still far from the level where we need to use the power that we've accumulated. We can go all out and fight. So guys, make a ruckus. All of you make a ruckus. Let's collapse the power of chaos in this void region. Hui waved his hand and laughed loudly in the void. Maple's instructions are the truth of the power of order. Come on, let's make the void lively. Those words were very embarrassing to say right in front of him. Yin Nuashing felt goosebumps all over his body. Before he died of embarrassment, he chose to demonstrate the awkwardness by using his hands. The vast sea of energy. Well, there's no need to reach that level. He just needed to use his full power selectively. So he threw out all of his magic arrays at once. The magic arrays that covered an entire region were comparable in size to the gap of chaos in front of them. However, when he threw out less than 1% of the magic arrays, Gu Jiaheng and his companions were all stunned. The violent energy that was enough to tear order and chaos apart had already caused a violent energy explosion when it gushed out. The intense light made the void no longer dark. A wave of energy that was so vast that it could not be concealed spread across the entire void region like a declaration. At the same time, there were similar energy explosions in other parts of the void region that were spreading out at the same time, shaking the entire void region. The light that tore order and chaos apart crashed into the gap of chaos. Other than the magnificent explosion just now, there was not much movement now. The light in the void gradually dimmed. It was quiet, just like Gu Jiaheng and the others who had turned into statues. It was completely silent and dead. The gap of chaos that hung high in the void trembled a few times, as if it was convulsing. Dense chaos energy began to appear at the edge and began to spread into the void. Just when Yin Nuashing and the others thought that it was going to explode with power, it suddenly exploded. However, it was just the impact of the energy explosion from within. The movement of the origin energy and the chaos energy fighting each other released a powerful destructive force, as if it had ignited a sun with a diameter of light years. The chaos energy at the edge of the gap of chaos was emitted at a speed that was several times faster than before. It gradually accelerated and collapsed. The large caverns spiraled in their line of sight and rapidly shrank until it was only a few thousand miles in diameter. Then, it suddenly disappeared in a rapid collapse. Yin Nuashing raised her head and looked at the void. Then, she tilted her head and looked at Gu Jiang. The void is silent. The chaos energy has been confirmed to have completely dissipated. There are no remnants. This little commander had never seen such a scene before. At this moment, he was dumbfounded. His eyes were wide open, and he could not come back to his senses. He was also stunned. No. What happened to the explosion of chaos energy? What happened to the swarm? With the power of the chaos concept body, it shouldn't be so easy to get rid of it, right? This can't be. This shouldn't be. See, you could not help but mutter. I was prepared to enter a magic array. In the end, this is too boring. Hui continued to smile bitterly. If it was resolved just like that, then wouldn't the words that he had said with great pride just now seem very awkward? They were all ready for a full-scale battle. Everyone had taken out their weapons of mass destruction and lined up in the void. The only thing left was to open up the realm of order and frantically increase their combat power. In the end, this was it. Being stared at by the four of them with the same strange look, Gu Jiaheng's face twitched violently. Finally, he could not help but laugh bitterly. Past experience tells us that indeed, anyway, in history, many people have tried to block the door of the chaos gap. Whether it was one person, a group of people, or a group of worlds, the outcome was very subtle. Like this is the first time I have seen a situation like this. Oh, we immediately understood. It seemed that they had attacked too quickly. They had pinned them down in their home and wiped them out in one fell swoop. After all, in the lower and middle planes, except for the soldiers of chaos who were nestled in a group of harmless little stone balls, the others who emerged from the void did not seem to be particularly strong. They had directly used excessive strength, and before the enemies had even emerged, they had scattered them evenly all over the void. But it was indeed a little awkward. The spiritual communication was filled with an awkward atmosphere. Well, a group of primeval order warriors were shaking their heads and glaring at the void. They were also glaring at a group of people who were preparing for battle behind them. Beside them were thousands of energy towers that were arranged in disorder. They were all prepared to go all out, but the enemy did not seem to be giving it their all. It was gone after 2 explosions, not as exciting as the fireworks at the Void frontline. There is no remnant of chaos energy in the area. Trace back to the distance. The energies that were not destroyed by the collapsed chaos gap are all gathering towards the upper plane. The chaos barrier that seals the upper plane had a brief energy fluctuation. Search in the Void region. It is confirmed that there are 13 energy resonance points in the lower and middle planes. Yun Nuashing immediately noticed the movement in the upper plane and captured something that he was concerned about. It should be something related to the barrier of the upper plane. Perhaps it's a key, or perhaps it's some kind of energy node. As for what it is, I still need to personally confirm it. Gu Jiaheng looked at them pondering at the same time. After some thought, he said honestly, well, although I don't know what you guys are thinking, the chaos era will not end here. According to past experience, although we have not tried to close the chaos gap, there is no doubt that the chaos gaps will open several times. There will be more of them later. So when will it end? Hui had a subtle expression on his face as he turned his head. The door had already been destroyed. Was it not over yet? There were no more chaos gaps in the Void region that was being monitored. They only opened up in places where the light of the world gathered. It was as if they were coming for the world of order. Therefore, it was very easy to find and destroy them. When the chaos energy in the Void completely dissipates, this chaos era will be considered over. However, in the past, each chaos era would last for billions of years. How can it end so quickly? Hui turned his gaze to Maple. Maple looked at him and said through his soul, I don't sense any remnant of chaos energy. Perhaps it is the energy that only they can sense. It might be a special law in the Void region. Well, this was a common thing. The rules of other places would not be effective against outsiders. At least for a short period of time, before the Void region realized that they had entered, the rules would not be effective against them. There had been similar experiences in the past. It was not the first time. Yun Nuashing's eyes flashed a few times. Her eyes were fixed on a corner of the Void. There are 13 energy resonance points. One of them is dimming rapidly. It seems that it is being covered by other energy. Although I don't know what is going on, we should go there quickly. The energy node that is responding from here is obviously related to the chaos barrier that seals the upper plane. There might be more abnormalities. All right, then we have to hurry. Hui sighed. He turned around and said to Gu Jiang, we have other things to do. Before we leave, we will leave enough defensive forces here to help you guard this Void region. As long as you do not leave this Void region, I guarantee that you will be safe and sound in this chaos era. Gu Jiaheng was confused from the beginning. He was trying his best to think, but he could not figure out anything. It was only until now that he quickly came back to his senses. He nodded and replied, oh, that I don't know. Forget it. I have something to confirm. What is it? Hui interrupted his own thoughts. He could not help but feel a little hopeful when he heard the words that seemed to have a deeper meaning in that slightly unusual gaze. Perhaps this little commander from the lower plane would pass on some of the information they needed after seeing the scene just now. For example, things related to origins, chaos concept bodies, and this godforsaken realm of chaos. Compared to outsiders like them running around in other people's territory in confusion, it would be more convenient for a local to tell them some facts. As for the battlefields in the lower plane, the main battlefields had been confirmed. They just had to leave a stretch of energy towers. As long as they were not constantly overloaded with energy, an energy tower could last for billions of years without collapsing. The energy towers on the front lines of the Void were depleting quickly. That was because the abyssal death mist spawn was going crazy at every moment, and they had to go crazy to That was one reason. The second reason was that those Order warriors were fighting too excitedly. Logistics had been cursing at him for 5 eras. Gu Jiaheng hesitated for a while, as if weighing his words. After a while, he finally decided to speak. Are you really not here to destroy the lower plane? Yin Nuashing and the others were speechless. Those shocking words. Their brains were about to explode. Are you all right? We could not help but retort. Did you see what we were doing in the beginning? If we really wanted to destroy the lower plane, how many of your weak worlds would be left with just a spit of our phlegm? Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. His energy shock had turned into a spit of phlegm. Gu Jiaheng smiled bitterly, his face trembling slightly as he said, very seriously, "The main thing is that the people from the upper plane have been destroying the lower plane and whatnot. Ahem, I'm just making sure. Are you really not planning to cast a long line to catch a big fish? Why don't you just tell me what you're planning to do so that I could die a quick death? We won't even be able to sleep if we don't figure it out." Hui slapped himself on the forehead loudly. He was almost dumbfounded by this little commander who might have some mental issues. To what extent have you been persecuted by the people from the upper plane? You don't have to be this crazy, right? You're a little paranoid. To what extent? When you first met us, didn't you feel a little? It's about that extent. Gu Jiaheng scratched his head and looked back from time to time. His body swayed a little unnaturally. To be honest, I can't fully believe it now. But if it's really like what you said just now, maybe we've always thought so. However, it's useless if I'm the only one who wavers. The lower plane, including the middle plane, has always been shrouded in the shadow of the people from the upper plane. We're also trapped by the chaos and have suffered so much that we no longer believe in anyone related to that place. Okay. Don't say anything awkward and contradictory. We already have the biggest contradiction in the void here. Hui patted Feng's shoulder and said to Gu Jiaheng, "Go do whatever you need to do. It won't be too late to give you a concrete answer after we're done with everything." If that's the case. Okay. Gu Jiaheng nodded reluctantly and bowed to them in an unknown place. "I wish you all the best." Watching the group of people from the lower plane leave, Hui couldn't help but ask, "What is this? What is this? What is this?" That sentence just now almost drove me crazy. But Feng Qingwang looked back at Yin Nuoxing and said, "My impression of you is a little better. We can communicate normally. Next time, after we're done with everything, we should be able to communicate normally. There is no disaster in this world, no hostility, no conflict of interest, no suspicion. Who can't communicate? But sometimes, no one can guarantee these things. So, let's not talk about this." Hui quickly shook his head to get rid of the poisonous thoughts in his mind. He looked at Feng and said, "The energy resonance points you mentioned just now, there are 12 of them now. The first one that since something has completely disappeared. It's covered by some kind of energy, but I still remember the last time it flashed in the void." When Yin Nuoxing said this, he tore open the void and created a teleportation gate. "Hurry up. Maybe we can find something left behind." "But what is it? Hey, don't drag me. It's rare for me to use my brain. I can think of something right away." When Hui was still mumbling, Yin Nuoxing grabbed him and rushed into the portal. She scolded, "When I was waiting for you to think of something, the void had already wiped out all the remaining traces. Because it was the fastest teleportation and it was a forceful tear in the void, there was a violent tremor in the void. During the teleportation, Hui felt as if his body was thrown out. Oh, he was thrown out. He was dragged away by foam. After a few seconds, his body's senses recovered. The void in front of him suddenly appeared. It was pitch black, but his senses could sense that there was something left behind. If he uses Yuanshi realm energy to investigate, he said, that seems to be a blurry belt of light, a trace left behind by a hasty tear in the void. Throwing Hui aside, Yin Nuoxing floated to the front of the belt of light. She said to the two girls, "See you, Qing Huang, go around and check the void. There are traces of energy tears in such a large area. There should be other traces left in the void." The slender band of light was probably no smaller than a small gap in the void. Reversely deducing from that point, one could roughly estimate the size of the thing that had escaped through the void. Probably 4 or 5 worlds' luminous orbs were moved. Hui walked forward and touched it lightly. Traces of energy of order. All right, that's to be expected. Trace the direction of the energy leaving, Yin Nuoxing murmured. She slowly turned her head and looked in the direction of the belt of light. It went to the upper plane. Hui was stunned. Wait, how did it get in? Didn't you just say that it was sealed? How did it get in? There's no way to find the way in by normal means, whether it's the Yuanshi realm or the origin energy. Yun Nuashing looked at him. Do you think that you can remove the door lock of the chaos concept body with just 3 axes? There's no way to get in by blasting it, and there's no way to get in by force. The key. We immediately understood. Energy resonance points. If the 13 energy resonance points are related to the barrier, they might be the key left behind. Lord Maple, Lord Hui, part of the large-scale void map that can be used to observe the void has been completed. There's basically no value in salvaging the rest. Take a look first. We're setting up the defense against the chaos here. I Ching threw over a void map in a conceptual sense. To put it simply, it was an intuitive map of things that humans could not see and things that humans could not understand. However, the parts that humans could not understand would also be left on the map for professionals to see. Oh, just in time. I Ching, here's part of the coordinates. You arrange the defense of the world of order and send some people over to take a look. We'll come back later. Yun Nuashing threw over the coordinates of the remaining 12 energy resonance points, and then turned to spread out the map with Hui. The void map that appeared before them was a large black sphere. Its size and various markings indicated that it was a void region that was about the same size as theirs. The center was extremely deep darkness, and apart from that, there were only a few sparks in the entire sphere. Each of those sparks was a cluster of light that illuminated the starry sky. They were just lone stars, without nebulas or galaxies. Lord Maple, this void map, we've seen this situation before. Huey's heart trembled as he looked at it. Not only have we seen it before, we've experienced it. We're experiencing it now. Yin Nuashing looked at him and slowly nodded. After 16 years of war in the void, such a scene appeared before them. It was the situation of the void region on their side after it was destroyed by the underworld. Both were exactly the same. Chapter 1821. The conquest of the Abyss Death Mist had already begun at the beginning of the era. At that time, the destruction of the void led by the god of origin had just passed. The void was still empty and was slowly recovering. At that time, there were no stars or galaxies in the void. There were only a few sparks hanging in the dark and lonely place, burning alone. That was the scene when the void was first created. After that, the void recovered. After going through several eras of the vigorous creation era, billions of worlds appeared in the void. The tiny light began to look for companions and gathered into even larger sparks, condensing into nebulas. The light that was released in the void could illuminate an entire region of the void, guiding even more light to gather. Then the underworld came, bringing along the abyss death mist from the edge of the lower plane. They didn't give the recovering void any more time to recover before they started the next round of conquest, bringing chaos to the entire world of order. The sparks in the void began to extinguish one by one, disappearing into the darkness. Furthermore, there were very few sparks that lit up again. The void that they stepped on seemed to have died once again, falling silent once again. The sparks in the lower plane were the first to extinguish completely, leaving only a few sparks that escaped the purge with an extremely low probability. Then, it was the middle plane. Under the current situation where the upper plane was almost suppressed to the edge of the middle plane, I tried to draw a void map of the world of order. The picture that was reflected was the current situation in front of me. The stars were dim, and there were only a few sparks floating in the void. There was only a lonely and eternal dark void between them, looking at each other from afar. On the other hand, in the upper plane, the stars were still trying their best to shine. It was just that they were shrouded in a circle of darkness that carried the sound of judgment. Death was close at hand, and peace was just a short, sweet dream. Comparing the appearance of the two regions of the void, one would find that other than the upper plane of this inner region that was completely covered by a deep darkness, the two regions were completely the same. They had thought that the upper plane's persecution of the middle plane and the interference of the Chaos Soldiers were the main reasons why the middle plane and lower plane were trapped. These two reasons wouldn't do anything to the middle plane and lower plane. At most, the scene that they saw was a little more tragic. Running from a familiar place to another place, and seeing only ashes and smoke, broken houses and scorched earth, they would definitely want to go to a better place as soon as possible. They thought that maybe they just happened to be in a bad place. All right, now that they had drawn a map of the inner region of the void through various energy nodes, it was a very bleak result. It wasn't that they happened to see a more pitiful scene, but that they could only see a more pitiful scene. That was because this was all that was left of the middle and lower planes. No matter how hard they tried to search, they could only see this much. Even though there were still several tens of thousands of worlds, perhaps even close to 100,000 worlds, this was already all that was left of the middle and lower planes. Thus, the only difference between observable and unobservable areas was that one had already been visited by outsiders. The other was a place that only insiders knew about, and the outsiders had yet to discover. The latter required more time to explore, and the progress would be extremely slow. Basically, it could be confirmed that the observable area of the void was the majority of the void of order. The number of worlds in the void was almost infinite, just like the void itself. However, there was a limit to that. The number and density of worlds in a region would follow the rules of the void environment, and naturally, there would never be such a sparse situation. Less than 100,000 worlds, that was simply ridiculous. It was not even 1% of a small region of the void, unless the remaining 99% were squeezed in the remaining corners of a large region of the void. However, that was basically impossible. After all, the luminous clusters of worlds would drift, and if they were all squeezed together, that 1% of them would definitely quickly drift towards a cluster. Still, the reality was that they were still in the void and stopped drifting, becoming isolated islands in the ocean. That shouldn't be a coincidence, right? Huey's cheeks twitched as he spoke. How could there be so many coincidences? How could there be? However, the map of the void that appeared before their eyes was a completely destroyed side. Broken walls and crumbled walls were torn apart, just like looking up at the night sky at night. Without the illumination of the stars, there were only 1 or 2 dim sparks left, and the star domain had also ushered in its own darkest moment. At present, there was no part of the void that was intact. The beings that lived in the void had actually coincidentally encountered the darkest moment of the starry sky. The ceaselessly flowing time incessantly washed away the knowledge of generation after generation, and a new generation simply did not believe that there was anything wrong with the darkened void. They were unaware of the sight of billions of worlds shining in the void in the past, and the only thing they protected and fought for was the world they were in, at most, the world group they were in. They had almost no thoughts about the void beyond, for it had become a true void. There was only darkness and deathly stillness. Therefore, when the upper plane tore their only shelter into pieces, the people who were born when the void was dark were bullied by the chaos concept bodies, and then ravaged by order. We sighed leisurely and exhaled at the void. So, the void we are in is affected by the abyssal death shroud, and the chaos concept bodies are responsible for this void? It seems so. To be able to destroy the void of order so neatly and almost cool the void and stop the activity of creation, only the pure power of chaos could do that. Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes. However, there are no remnants of the chaos tide in the concept layer of those worlds, nor are there any remnants of the chaos aura. They are completely unaffected by the chaos. Perhaps they were once affected, but all traces are gone. Perhaps they really weren't affected at all. When the powerful forces of chaos crushed them, they were lucky enough not to be destroyed. After all, they were less than 1% of the targets in the entire void. Perhaps they were inadvertently overlooked, even if that wasn't their intention. Hui stretched out his hand and pinched the void a few times. He then turned his gaze to other places. The underworld didn't manage to completely destroy the lower and middle planes. Although they left behind a large area of the abyssal death mist to seal it off, they couldn't make the non-order power affect the order of the void from its roots. So, they couldn't cover the entire conceptual range. Only the observable part of it was destroyed. The void region here is probably the same. The chaos concept bodies could not completely destroy the order of the void of order, which was why they could not really wipe out everything. The remaining less than 100,000 world luminous orbs might have escaped the calamity because they were not observed. Yin Nuoxing's attention shifted away from the void map. His gaze followed the energy light belt left behind and moved towards the area where the upper plane was located. They were now at the edge of the upper plane, and there was still a short distance away from the upper plane. Let's follow them and take a look. The gate should have been closed, but since it's still early, maybe we can still find some traces in the void. Calling the two girls who did not find anything, Yin Nuoxing followed the direction of the energy ribbons. The distance, which was neither too far nor too near, was a little confusing. The destination of the teleportation was not clear, and the vague teleportation could not be so precise that they could teleport as far as they wanted. If they were to go step by step, using long-distance teleportation would be a little too much, and they might bump into a barrier and have an accident. If they were to follow the traces, it would be a little too far, and if they were to slowly teleport over a small distance, well, it seems that they could only slowly teleport over and over again. The void teleportation magic circle that was constructed brought the four of them to flicker in the void again and again. Every time they came out of the void teleportation magic circle, they would be teleported again in the next second. It looked as though they were leaping forward in the void teleportation magic circle, and every time they came out, they would only see darkness in front of them. They couldn't recognize where they were at all. If they didn't look at the concept layer of laws, they wouldn't know if they were getting closer or further away from the upper plane. Phone, are we not there yet? Why are you taking so long to teleport? When Yin Nuoxing was muttering distance in her heart, we could not help but complain. When she turned her head, she saw that he was picking at his ears and staring at the void. He was so bored that he could not help but shake his head helplessly. The energy traces are very long, and they are intermittent. They are the traces left behind when they tore the void in a hurry to perform a large-scale void jump. If we follow the aura step by step, we can only jump again and again. If we directly touch the chaos barrier, well, I'm afraid that we won't be able to control ourselves and bump into the barrier. I'm worried that there will be problems. All right. Hui sighed resignedly and spread his hands. Let me see how I Ching and the others are doing. Call me when we arrive. We've arrived. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. Why did it sound like he was some sort of transport in the mortal world? They did not know much about the situation during the Chaos era. As outsiders, this void region did not seem to have any intention of opening its heart to them for the time being. They could not immediately come into contact with some of the rules that were only related to the life forms that lived here. In short, they could not fully grasp the situation during the Chaos era, and they did not have the time to stay where they were and do nothing. After all, they did not have many people, but they were also worried that the forces of chaos would launch a sneak attack. If they caused a huge ruckus and the ambush became stronger and they happened to be away, it would be terrible. Therefore, they could only leave enough energy towers in the Chaos Gap and the main areas of the world of order to assist in the defense before heading to the place where the energy resonance occurred. Probably thinking about it from inside to outside, we suddenly connected some things. Phone, according to the current situation, if the tragedy of this void region is caused by the chaos concept body, can we assume that the situation in the sealed upper plane is similar to the void region we're in? Yin Nuoxing was startled, but quickly reacted. Does that mean that order and chaos are fiercely clashing inside? We nodded vigorously. The chaotic concept bodies were always thinking about destroying order. Even if they retreated to a corner, they would definitely not give up on causing trouble. Just like the time on the Cloud Continent, if it were not for the backup plan set up by the heavenly god of origin, the void of order would have welcomed an unrestrained chaotic concept body, and it could have collided with the world of order and the underworld at any time. Those beings that were the origin of order seemed to have calculated everything and arranged everything properly. Even if they were gone, they did not allow the chaos concept body to do as it pleased in the void. If that's the case, this is the domain of the chaos concept body, which means that there must be some power that keeps it in check as well. Perhaps it's a seal or something else, and perhaps there really is a heavenly god of origin hiding here and confronting the chaos concept body. Perhaps they could look forward to something. Perhaps if they really brought back a heavenly god of origin, then don't think about it. Yin Nuoxing glanced at her old friend, knowing that he was indulging in wild fantasies from his elated expression. If it's really as you say, we'll just be giving ourselves away, even if we get involved in the confrontation between the heavenly god of origin and the chaos concept body. Moreover, since they're confronting each other and the lower and middle planes have been beaten to such a state, it means that the heavenly god of origin is at a disadvantage. If we rush in, we'll just be a side dish. He was speechless. Those two sentences had turned his fantasy into a nightmare. As they leaped through the void, they could occasionally see some remnant broken scenes that had not completely disappeared after fusing with the void. For example, the chaotic light in front of them entangled the void, mixed with countless broken energies as if it was surrounded by energy particles. It resembled a torn galaxy, with a huge world barrier floating in the void. It was clearly not the size of a single world cluster. There should have been dozens of world clusters here, or perhaps a smaller world group that had been destroyed recently. Moreover, it would not have been the void's own destruction. A natural void disaster would not have gnawed a world group into a mess as if it had been bitten by a pack of rats. Nor would such a huge composite condensation be left behind. It was clearly man-made. The hasty pause did not allow the three of them to examine the chaotic condensation more closely. When the void appeared in front of them again, they were already in another place. Is that damage caused by chaos? Or is it caused by order? Hui sighed faintly. It's not chaos. There's no presence of chaos. Moreover, if it was caused by chaos, the scene would be very clean, and there would not be such a mess left behind. Order? Those damn people from the upper plane? What are they trying to do? Yin Nuoxing shook his head. It's still impossible to tell with the current minute conditions, but he paused for a moment and even stopped leaping through the void. His fingers twirled around his long hair as he pondered and replied, "The middle and lower planes that have been destroyed by chaos have left behind almost 100,000 world clusters. For the time being, we do not know how these 100,000 world clusters escaped the purge of chaos, but chaos clearly did not intend to let them go. Even if its main forces were gathered in the upper plane and were still fighting, perhaps in a bitter battle, the middle and lower planes did not completely escape the calamity. The era of chaos is the best proof. It still wants to destroy the remaining worlds, even if there's only 1% of them left. This is the inclination of chaos. Then, what is the inclination of order? Think about it from the perspective of the beings of order. What is the purpose of those ghostly people from the upper plane to do evil? Hui scratched his head. With our current realm, if there's something in the middle and lower planes that is worth their attention, I can only think of one answer. And if there's no accident, it should be the only answer. Something related to the heavenly god of origin. The middle and lower planes actually looked a little strange. He was not talking about the strangeness caused by external forces, but the middle and lower planes themselves. Through the statistics of the void map, they had also calculated another fact. Most of the world clusters in the middle and lower planes originated from the previous era. Almost 100,000 world clusters left behind. 90% of them originated from the 36th and 17th eras. The rest of the world clusters only emerged in this era. The latest ones could be traced back to 10 years ago, while the rest were born even before that. They were all products of order that should have been scrapped due to overage. Cough, cough. These clues that couldn't be considered clues all pointed towards the 36th and 37th eras. That should be the time when this void domain and chaos domain were formed. They were the unlucky ones who were dragged into this. This information was meant for those who understood the situation. However, they were only a group of order life forms in the current era. They didn't understand what exactly happened during the 36th and 37th eras. What he wanted to say was that these worlds that were born in the previous era might be related to the heavenly god of origin. That was probably the reason why they could survive. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the phenomenon of 90% of the survivors coming from the same era. Perhaps those world clusters that were born in this era were the real survivors. They were purely lucky to have escaped the cleansing of the forces of chaos. However, as for something related to the heavenly god of origin, they did find something in the inner world of that world. It was a statue, a lump of stone that could only be used to calculate time. That should be it. Oh, right, there was also a crystal with the power of origin. That thing broke free from the statue. After it broke free, it flew into the void and fled in the direction of the upper plane. These are probably related to the heavenly god of origin. If there were more, it would only mean that they had overlooked even more. He got goosebumps as he thought about it. He could not help but mutter, beings of order, looking for something related to the heavenly god of origin. They're also beings of order, yet they attack order. What the hell? Don't tell me that the underworld is here. You're thinking too much. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and shook her head. They were fence-sitters back then. It's impossible for them to be involved in this kind of battle that directly collides with order and chaos. The demonic figure in the Cloud Continent had also said, the general meaning is that we don't know when they will be gone. The Underworld's base camp is obviously still in the outer void, and they are still stirring up trouble there. Hui scratched his head, unwilling to give up. But in the world of order, there shouldn't be anyone else other than the Underworld who can meet all three conditions at once, right? There shouldn't be a second batch of order who is an enemy of order and the heavenly god of origin. They can't just throw themselves into the embrace of the chaotic void, volunteering to join the chaos and turn the tables on order. Moreover, if both of them succeeded, then wouldn't the void of order be too miserable? There are spies every year. It's just that there are a lot of them at that time. Maybe that's the case. Yin Nuoxing's expression was quite strange when she said that. It was obvious that she was unwilling to face another powerful enemy of order. However, the clues in front of them told them that this might be the case. So, the world of order. It's not pure. It's not pure at all. This exaggerated laughter, this exaggerated tone, this voice. Hui shuddered violently when he heard it. This guy's resentment towards the world of order was probably increasing exponentially. At this time, he should be glad that Maple didn't know that a group of people who were struck by lightning had come to the front line of the void to stir up trouble. If Maple knew about it, the world of order would probably suffer. We're here. Don't think about it anymore. There will only be answers to those questions later. Whether it's the underworld or another group of spies of order, as long as they really cooperate with the chaos to stir up trouble, they will all be treated as the chaos. Don't accept surrender, don't kill them, don't give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. If you want them to continue living in the void of order in other ways, I'd rather blow up the void of order. Hui was speechless. That really fits Maple's answer. Putting aside those messy thoughts, they turned their attention to the front. It was still the void. The void in front of them was darker and deeper. Their senses were blocked by a thin layer of invisible barrier. That was the chaos barrier that separated the upper realm and the middle realm. Until now, they still had no way to shake it. In front of the thin barrier, the blurry band of energy light appeared again. One end of it pointed to the middle realm, and a part of it seemed to have squeezed into the upper realm. This layer of barrier should have been opened for a short period of time, allowing the group of people who fled with the light of several worlds to pass through, leaving behind traces. The breath has disappeared here. Yin Nuoxing stepped forward and put her hand on the chaos barrier. She tried to use the origin energy for a while. Then she turned to the three of them and shook her head. It's not working. Although there's a crack, there's still no way to tear it open. The defense of the chaos barrier is too strong. Even if I use all my strength now, the probability of opening a crack is less than 1 in 10 million. It seems that only a key can open a crack. Key. Hui let out a long sigh of distress. His face was gloomy. They're obviously from the Order. Why would they have a key to open the chaos barrier? They've really defected to the enemy, these people. Why don't I see anything good about the chaos void? Aren't they all from the Order void? What good would it do them to destroy the Order void back to its original point? Staring blankly at the empty void where only the Order of chaos is left? Looking at the world without order? Hui scolded. He could not help but turn to Maple and said, "These people hate the Order void more than you do." Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. "I don't hate. At most, I hate. I hate those things that are not pure. I hate those things that are mixed with too many impure things. But this is what the Order void looks like, so I can only hate it. It's not to the extent of—" He paused and pondered for a moment. Then he said seriously, "It's not to the extent of now. Well, if the war between Order and chaos has reached this point, and the Order void is stirring up trouble, maybe, I can't say, maybe, well, go crazy and tear down the house." Hui was speechless. He was glad that he did not meet the people who stirred up trouble a few years ago, that allowed the Order void to survive for a few more eras. There's nothing here. I Ching and the others have already gone to the rest of the energy resonance points. Should we go to another place to check out the situation? Hui coughed and quickly changed the topic. Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and looked at the chaos barrier. She only hesitated for a few seconds before nodding. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.